I'm ready to.
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, good. Oh, good.
Julian was posting about you.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the meeting of the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Commission to order. City Clerk, would you please take roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Dolan? I'm sorry. Let me change that. Commissioner Soto?
Present.
Commissioner Ward?
Present.
Commissioner Kucharski? Commissioner Cummings? Commissioner Barraza?
Present.
Commissioner Singh? Commissioner Miller?
Present.
Vice Chair Dolan?
Here.
And Chair McCoy?
Present.
We have quorum.
Thank you. We will now begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everyone please stand? Ready? Salute. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
We will start with the approval of the agenda. City Clerk, are there any changes or proposed changes to the agenda tonight?
Oh, President McCoy, not at this time. No changes.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dolan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. This item is approved. We will now move on to approval of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes from April 15th, 2024? No? Okay,
President McCoy, there are no changes to the minutes.
thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dolan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. This item is approved. We will now move on to subcommittee reports. This item is a discussion item for the commission and no public comments will be taken related to this item. Does the Cultural Arts Plan Subcommittee have an update it would like to provide to this commission?
Yes, thank you. The Cultural Arts Committee has an item coming up later on this agenda and also wanted to provide the following report. We are so excited to bring the Measure P art grant process to this stage where the first round of award grants is being recommended to the commission. Growing up as a child in Fresno, I was profoundly impacted by attendance at the free readings put on by the Fresno Poets Association, where any member of the public could see National Poet Laureate Philip Levine. This directly impacted my decision to attain a creative writing degree and the possibility of arts and cultural activities becoming more widespread and publicly accessible to the residents of Fresno throughout all parts of the city and in many mediums and forms is coupled with the hope that it will create positive impacts for a wide variety of people in all life stages as well. Our committee continues to hold the memory of Dr. Francina Puda at the center of how we carried out the committee's task of finalizing the Cultural Arts Plan, developing the Arts and Culture Grant Guidelines, and working through this first round of grant applicants. We deeply miss her perspective and contributions and hope that we have honored her legacy with efforts to advance diversity and inclusion. The recommended grant awards will serve applicants of all sizes, orientations, physical abilities, race and ethnicities, forms of artistic expression, and a broad range of cultures that together weave the diverse tapestry of what makes the city of Fresno truly unique and impressive. Grant recipients reflect organizations that serve the youth, the senior population, a diverse cross-section of cultures, will bring support to the established organizations still recovering from the impacts of the pandemic, and also encourages and promotes those new and emerging artists and art projects in the way that Measure P the ordinance envisions. The recommended awards amounts a very significant portion of the available Measure P arts and culture grant dollars out to artists and art and culture organizations, funding over 85% of the eligible applicants. We are so excited to see what they can achieve with this funding. To clear up some misconceptions, no one from this commission, the city, or the board and staff of the Fresno Arts Council was involved in scoring the grant applications. No one who had a familial or a board and staff relationship with a current applicant in the first round of funding was involved in scoring the grant applications. Although the Fresno Arts Council staff facilitated the grant review process, no staff members were present or participated when discussions about proposed projects that they had a familial or management relationship to were carried out by the review panelists. The review process was conducted independently and in a manner that exceeds the conflict of interest standards established by the IRS. The review panelists were volunteers who carried out their duties thoughtfully, and we truly appreciate their service. We encourage anyone who has a new appreciation for the role of the volunteer panelists in scoring the grant applications to please apply and get involved in the process, as it will continue over the next few decades. It is confusing to evaluate the recommendations against 4 categories of award type and different criteria for applicant size across those awards. Here is the summary. 92 unique applicants passed through the eligibility screening process. After the review panel scored those applications, 79 of the 92 applicants, over 85%, were recommended to receive awards, and some of those are recommended to receive both project and organizational support awards. For the emerging category, 80% of the eligible project awards will receive funding, and 68% of the eligible applicants will receive operating support awards. For the established category, 87% of the eligible project awards will receive funding, and 80% of the eligible applicants will receive operating support awards. The quality of the applications, as evaluated by the review panelists, had a direct impact on the overall scores for each application and associated allocations of funding. This first round of applications benefited from the additional funding available, and our recommendations serve a broader range of eligible applicants than will be possible in future years. There's also a whole cohort of emerging projects and organizations that will be moved out of that category next year by virtue of this funding. So we want to continue to encourage new and small organizations to apply. This round of applications had a lot of first-time applicants, which was exciting. It also helped identify opportunities for improvement. Any applicant who is not recommended for an award can get a copy of their application review feedback from the Fresno Arts Council. Additional technical assistance workshops will be conducted for future application rounds as well. The Fresno Arts Council will offer workshops specific to grant budgets and tailoring narratives to the grant questions, and Commissioner Miller and I will offer a pro bono nonprofit law compliance session in collaboration with the Fresno Black Metro Chamber and other Fresno chambers that serve diverse groups to help get more organizations into a place of eligibility for future years of Measure P art and culture grant funding and similar opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Parks Master Plan Subcommittee have an update and would like to provide to the commission?
Madam Chair, I just want to remind our staff that we are supposed to get a copy of the draft document. I understand that it's going to be circulating pretty soon, and we are seeking comments from the public. So I don't know what the plan is, but we certainly would like to get a draft document as soon as possible.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Does the Highest Needs Neighborhood Subcommittee have an update and would like to provide to the commission? We have no update at this time. Does the San Joaquin River Parkway Subcommittee have an update and would like to provide to the commission?
No update at this time.
Thank you. We will now move on to member reports and comments. As a reminder, this is a time for commission members to report anything they feel important for the public or commission to know, but is not a time for discussion. Commissioner Barraza, do you have any comments or reports for this commission?
I don't have any comments.
Thank you. Welcome, Commissioner Singh. Do you have any reports or comments?
It's good to be back. No reports or comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller?
Nothing for me right now, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Dolan?
More an observation than a comment because of where we are located. I'm particularly sensitive to what goes on around Roding Park, and I will say that right now it is very difficult to get to Roding Park on the surface roads coming from the city. There's a tremendous amount of construction and changing of roads that go on around there. And I know that more is planned between 99 beautification and some of the work around high-speed rail. So I guess I would encourage parks and or public works to be very proactive about getting out as much information about changing conditions to get into Roding in particular, but any part of the park's ecosystem that's being impacted by all this. And that's it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dolan. Commissioner Ward?
None, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Soto?
Not at this time, thank you.
All right, well, I have a couple of comments that I would like to share with the commission and the Parks Department staff. Last Friday, I was doing some filming at Frank H. Ballpark about the importance of voting and investing in our community. When we arrived at the park, the bathrooms were open, but the bathrooms were in horrible condition. I understand that we are investing in trying to revitalize Southwest Fresno parks, but the condition of the bathroom was the same condition it was when I was a little kid. So that was very embarrassing. The electrical outlet outside did not work, so we were not able to use the generator for lighting. We were under a covered, a shaded area, but the lights up there were not working, so we still were not able to use the lighting. I do have pictures that I would like to share with park staff, and hopefully we can get some investment into this park and revitalize those bathrooms, because when I use the other parks in the other side of town, those bathrooms are nice, especially at Inspiration Park. They're ADA accessible, and it was embarrassing to have this crew from LA come down to talk about the importance of voting and investing in the community. And we go to my neighborhood park that I grew up at, and my elementary school is down the street, and my high school that I attended is up the street, and the bathrooms were in that condition. So I just want to put that on Parks' radar. Thank you. We will now move on to City Administration and Park staff reports and comments. Does anyone from the administration have any reports or comments for the commission?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Does anyone from Park staff have any reports or comments for the commission?
I do. Aaron Aguirre, Parks Director. I've got a number of them, so I'll try to go quickly. I know we've got a packed house here tonight. May 2nd, City Council awarded Broadway Parquet construction. This is a Measure P Category 2 funds in the tune of about $2.4 million, almost $2.5 million. This, if you remember, is the park there on Broadway and Elizabeth. Anticipated construction start date of fall of 2024, so I wanted to highlight that. Just an update on Camp Fresno. As of this morning, we have 1,255 campers who are registered to go up to camp. Just to put that kind of in context, last year we had 793 campers go up, so well ahead of that pace. And then just to remind the commissioners as well as the community, first date of camp is June 10th, and we still have additional seats and spots available. So if you have anybody, please send them our way. And then just want to go through upcoming events this Saturday from 12 to 2:30 at Sunset Community Park, our center. We will have our outreach event. At this event, we'll have lunch provided. And we'll have a resource fair, bike rodeo, music, games, and kids activities, as well as an open house there at the community center. And then starting June 12th, Good Times are back. Speaking of the parks, it's actually going to be at Frank H., so we'll make sure that's taken care of. Starting June 12th, every Wednesday, again, we'll have food out there. We'll have movie nights, swimming, a basketball tournament, and then family games and community resources. And then do want to note, as school is on the verge of letting out, and the heat is coming. Swim lesson registrations open May 28th. And again, that's free for Fresno residents and Fresno Unified School District students under the age of 18, so ages 3 to 17. Any non-resident or adult over 18 can still partake in the swim lessons at a cost of $50. And then I want to highlight, this is something that is new to the Parks Department, but June 25th through June 29th, we're having a junior golf clinic camp at the Len Ross Center. Not sure if you all know where that is. That's in Southwest Fresno. Address is 1604 South Tillman, ages 12 to 17, so our teens. And we're really looking at teaching our youth the basics of golf. So they'll learn the golf swing, chipping, putting, and the etiquette of golf. So we're excited to offer that. And then also splash pads. I know that's a popular amenity. That will be opening up Saturday, May 25th. Those will be open daily from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And just to remind you, we have 9 locations: Dickey Playground, Fig Garden Loop, Inspiration, Martin Ray Riley, Melody, Mosqueda, Todd Beamer, Vinland, and then coming later this fall we'll have, or this summer, Fink White will be opening as well. And then on that same note, city pools will be opening for recreation swim starting Monday, June 10th. And those again will be open daily from 1 to 5 p.m. And then finally, our Fresno Unified sites for recreation swim will open on the weekends from 12 to 5 starting June 15th. And those locations are Edison, McLean, Hoover, Roosevelt, and Fresno High. So that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on.
May I ask a question, please?
Absolutely.
I noticed you have an event on May 25th as the West Fresno Community Day, which is wonderful. Are you having these types of events throughout the city? Like, has there been one in Southeast Fresno already, or what's the plan?
So this plan here that you're mentioning, the May 25th, is actually part of our Southwest Fresno, the community centers. This is where we are receiving input from the community. So this is a planned activity for the community, and again, to get input at our 4 community centers that we're kind of reimagining, re-envisioning. So that's what that event is. But we do have multiple camps and events going on throughout the city, and we can be happy to share that information with you. If you're not able to find it on social media, be happy to share that with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. We will now move on to unscheduled communication. Would any member of the public like to speak on any issue within the jurisdiction of this commission? You will have up to 3 minutes. As a reminder, if you would like to comment on a scheduled workshop and discussion items, now is the time to make those comments. If you would like to make a comment regarding any of the scheduled hearings, comments will be taken when each item is called. Do we have anyone online? This is for one of the hearings. Someone behind you.
I haven't seen that yet. Here you go. Hello, board. How's everybody doing? It's been a while. It's good to see some old faces and some new faces. So my name is Pedro Navarro Cruz. I'm a District 3 resident. I'm a soccer fanatic. I coach my kids' soccer team. I started an organization called Love, Peace, and Football, where we advocate for the growth and the inclusive growth of the sport of soccer, which is the largest sport in the city of Fresno, as declared by the Parks Master Plan. So I'm just here now that it's budget season. I would have stayed for the appropriate time to declare this, but I actually have to go coach, so I'm really at a time crunch here. But now that it's budget season, I just want to remind you all folks, commissioner, parks leaders, et cetera, that soccer is huge in this city, and I really want to challenge you all in helping meet that demand. I know it almost feels impossible because the growth and the need for it is almost infinite. I've been trying to track down how many leagues and teams there are here in the city of Fresno, and it is very, very difficult to do so. There's different formats of playing soccer. There's 11 versus 11, 5 versus 5, 7 versus 7, 1 versus 1. You get the picture. There's different ways to playing it. However, here in the city, it just seems like there isn't enough space ever to meet that demand. We have so many families that have to travel all the way to Clovis to play at a Clovis Unified School because they're accessible there. We have folks that are traveling to other cities, even outside of Fresno, to be able to play there because here in Fresno, there just isn't enough space. Sure, the Pillables Park got reseeded, but it's almost like we're back at square one. I was like 14 years old when that park was built, and now it's good to see it in a better state, but it almost feels like nothing has happened because there aren't more spaces. The city really hasn't heard our call to build more futsal courts, which is an inexpensive way to provide places for people to play soccer. If you all are ever up for it, we host a free weekly pickup at Cary Park every Monday night. From 6:30 to 8, we do it for the youth, and from 8 to 10 p.m., we're out there it's open for adults, men, women, for anybody. We never charge a penny. We use our own equipment, and it's beautiful. We turn the inline hockey court into 3 futsal courts. So we have 3 games running at the same time. There's everybody's listening to the music that's being played, and when the music stops, everybody knows that their time is over, and the teams that were waiting come in. And so we have about, I would say on a given night, 80 to 90 people that show up for those few hours, and I feel like that's just really scratching the surface, where if the city had a bigger vision for this particular sport, it could just really transform the livelihood of so many people. But yeah, I just want to leave you all with that, just to remember that soccer is huge. There's a lot of people that are very invested in the sport, provide a lot of volunteerism, a lot of service, and want to see the sport growth, but we really have to treat it that way. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh, one more minute? That's enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone online?
There's no one on Zoom with a raised hand at this time. Thank you, President. Go ahead.
We will now move on to hearings. ID number 24-717, hearing presenting the Mayor's Parks After School Recreation and Community Service Department budget for fiscal year 2025 with public comment. Would someone from the Parks Department please begin the presentation?
Yes, please. this isn't going to work, then will it? All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Aaron Aguirre, Parks Director. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm here tonight to initiate the fiscal 2025 Parks Department budget. I'd like to express my gratitude to several key individuals who, alongside myself, Chief Balderrama, Director Mosier, the dedicated countless hours over the past months to develop this budget in front of you. Building a complex and detailed budget requires a strong team. My sincere thanks goes to, and I don't know if she's here, but Desiree Perry from PD, Yvonne Diaz from Public Works, and of course, Tu Zhong from my team, Shelby McNabb, Edward Chenevere, and my entire Parks team. The presentation tonight will go, there we go. Just want to go over the agenda. 6 items here for your viewing tonight. First piece of this will be the Measure P breakdown. We'll go through the 5 categories as well as the new subfunds that we've created and how that pertains to Public Works, PD, Public Utilities, and Public Works. In addition to that, each individual director will come up and speak to their department. With that, Chief Balderrama will be here to speak about the police department and the park rangers and the success we've seen there. Beautify Fresno will be led by Mark Standruff here behind me to go through all the great items that they're constantly going through. And then landscape, irrigation, and Measure P Category 5 will be presented by Director Mosier. And then finally, the Parks Department, that budget will be presented by my team. And then the last piece of this is really for you all. This is the budget recommendations that you all will be able to make to the department, which ultimately go to City Council for adoption. So tonight we'll give you your first crack at that, and then we will come back next week on May 29th, and you'll have another opportunity to make those recommendations, which then we will take to City Council at our budget hearing. Those budget hearings will be the week of June 3rd. Not quite sure of our lineup yet, but once we get that, we'll make sure that that information is out for you all. With that, I'd like to bring up Edward Chenevere, who will go through the Measure P breakdown in detail, and then at that point, we'll go through the lineup as described. So with that, Edward Chenevere, thank you.
Good evening, Chair McCoy, members of the Commission. Ed Chenevere, Assistant Director for the Parks Department. And I'm happy to be here today to present to you the Parks Department and the Measure P FY25 budget submission. As the Director indicated, this has been, of course, a really quick process. The Mayor released his budget on Thursday. And so we have to get that over to the clerk so they can publish it for you guys the next day. And so we appreciate having the opportunity to be here today. This first slide that we have here is a little bit hard to read, but we do have handouts up front if any members of the public would like a closer look. And this really is the total overview of Measure P in the Parks Department's fiscal year 2025 budget. This slide is very similar to one that was presented last year and shows a high-level overview of all of the Measure P revenues, expenditures, and where they're found in the mayor's proposed budget. Beginning balance on the left-hand side is the anticipated carryover from fiscal year 2024 to fiscal year 2025. Taxes are, of course, anticipated FY25 Measure P revenues and are expected to be about 3.5% lower than fiscal year 24 forecasted budget, but about 1% higher than FY24 estimated actuals. This year, we are including forecasted interest in the revenue forecast for FY25, which you'll find under other revenue. And after that, you'll see all of the expenditures shown by the administering department. Some of the funds that are budgeted within the parks budget, that's going to be the columns under the green section there, are actually administered by Public Works, Public Utilities, the Fresno Police Department, or the Finance Department, who either direct charge our Parks Department budget or they post through what's called an interdepartmental charge, as is the case of the Police Department. By following along to the totals on the right-hand side, you can actually see a summation of each operating budget. So there's about $14.9 million is proposed for the parks operating budget, $7.3 million is proposed for the Public Works operating budget, $1.5 million for Public Utilities and Beautify Fresno, $1.6 million for the Park Ranger program, $95,300 for the Finance Department for our audit support there, $11.3 million proposed for Arts and Culture, of which $5.68 million is anticipated to be made available from FY24 revenues to be awarded in FY25. I'll go over that a little bit more on a subsequent slide. And $50.5 million are proposed for capital projects. As shown in the columns across the top, you'll see that Category 5 is budgeted directly into the Public Works and Public Utilities budget, and that the Capital Projects Department also directly budgets a small portion of Categories 1 and 2. One of the key changes that I really want to draw your attention to this year is that we did a very in-depth exercise to make sure that all of the highest needs funding is really clearly delineated. And we did that by creating what are called new sub-funds within the city's accounting system. So you'll see sub-fund 2711, which is high needs funding from Category 1, and sub-fund 2712, which tracks highest needs in Category 2 for new park development. Similarly, the Public Works Department has segregated Category 5 into the subcategories of Category 5. And Director Mosier will talk about that a little bit more later. Revenues over, jumping ahead. There we go. So Category 1, on this slide, you'll see we've highlighted the sections of the budget that are from Measure P Category 1 for operating and maintaining existing parks. This year, the expenditures are appropriated distinctly in accordance with the highest needs definition. $16.7 million for existing parks citywide, of which $4.2 million is allocated to continue capital projects, and $18.3 million for existing parks in highest needs neighborhoods, of which $13 million is to continue capital projects, and approximately $42,000 each from both citywide funds and highest need funds, respectively, are budgeted in the new capital projects department for capital projects delivery and administration. Category 2 is budgeted primarily in the Parks Department for acquiring and developing new parks. And similar to Category 1, the expenditures here have been designated into those separate sub-funds for both citywide funds and highest need funds. $13.2 million is allocated for new parks citywide from both carryover and from new revenue, and $12 million for new parks in highest needs neighborhoods, and approximately $41,500 each from citywide funds and highest needs funds, respectively, also in the capital projects department for capital project delivery.
I have a question. Would you like to take questions as you go, or would you like to hold them to the end?
It would probably be easier if we held to the end because it's a very long presentation, but of course I can take them as you go too.
Just wanted to know, so if any commissioners have any questions, please hold them until the end of the presentation, please.
Great. Thank you, Chair McCoy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This slide shows expenditure category 3, which is for Parks Department programs providing youth, senior, and job readiness programming. This fund is anticipated to begin the year with a negative balance. That is on account of the lower revenue actuals to budget from both fiscal year 2023, which affected the carryover, and fiscal year 2024. Of that money, all $3.5 million, of course, is appropriated for programs and services in the Parks Department. We'll go over some of those accomplishments a little bit more later. Expenditure category 4 is budgeted in the Parks Department, and of this funding, $5.658 million is anticipated from fiscal year 2024 receipts to be available to the cultural arts grant programs in fiscal year 2025. That is, of course, subject to the final revenue figures once we reconcile everything with the Measure P audit. And $5.576 million is anticipated to be received in new tax revenue in fiscal year 25 to be awarded in fiscal year 2026. Expenditure category 5, of course, for trails, the San Joaquin River Conservancy Parkway projects, and the beautification, city beautification, is administered by the Department of Public Works. The Parks Department's budget also does include about $1.359 million for the Milburn Overlook redesign project, with the balance of this funding in the Public Works and Public Utilities budgets. Public Works and Public Utilities are both here today, so they'll be discussing those allocations in greater detail. And with that, I would like to invite our partner departments to present their budgets, and then I'll be back after that to go over the Parks Department budget with you. And with that, I think the first one up is Chief Balderrama.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. Before I get started, I do want to thank Director Aguirre for his support in this joint venture. You know, clearly the funding comes from Measure P, but the Park Ranger program has been a police department program since the beginning, and so far it has exceeded my expectations for the program, so I'm very happy to report that. Next slide, please. Oh, there it is. Oh, thank you. So far, we have 18 of the 20 park ranger positions filled. We do have 2 vacancies, although we have several applicants in the pipeline right now, and we foresee filling those positions very soon. The park rangers they work 7 days a week, 15-hour days on 2 shifts, and I'll talk about those shifts here in a little bit. Very high visibility. One of the comments that we get about the park rangers is that they are very approachable, very high visible. Obviously, they utilize e-bikes and Polaris 4-wheel drive vehicles, along with some pickup trucks, but their job is to be very visible and engaging. One of the things that we really appreciate is the improved collaboration, communication with our parks managers. I know that we meet on a weekly basis. Sometimes we discuss issues on a daily basis just to make sure that we stay on top of any matters which may arise dealing with security issues at our parks. We do have an improved efficiency dealing with problems because our park rangers, they get to go out there and in person and see any issues that we may have at a park, whether it's something vandalized or individuals who do not belong at the park. For example, if there's people who are out there drinking in public, things like that, they identify those things and they solve them very, very quickly. At this point in time, their primary function, not only to be visible and engaging, is to try to take care of some of those minor infractions, such as parking issues, drinking in public, as I said before, and just engaging with the community. We do have continued training for the park rangers. I don't know if that's been detailed at this commission meeting before, but they get 10 weeks of training. That includes training on how to utilize the e-bikes. They are bike certified, how to drive the Polaris. Also, they spend some time with our HEART team to know how to de-escalate and engage with our unhoused community, along with a CSO to learn how to take police reports and learn the inner workings of our police department when it comes to collecting evidence and taking police reports. All that is part of the training. We started with 6 weeks of training and quickly figured out that was not long enough. So we added more training, which has just made them more competent and more effective. They also get certified through something called crime prevention through environmental design. This is a national program which has been around for the better part of 25 years, and it basically allows the park rangers to be able to tell the design of a building if anything affects or increases criminality in that location. Sometimes by just trimming bushes and adding lighting, it can actually make a building, a parks building in this case, a little bit less susceptible to us being the victims of crime. This next slide shows various pictures and functions of the program. As you can see, they have the updated uniform that this commission recommended. We've also looked into, it will change a little bit more. Apparently those polo shirts aren't quite as durable as we thought they would be for all the various functions that they perform. So we may go with a different brand, make them a little bit more durable because the uniforms are expensive, but the colors will stay exactly the same. We really like those colors, and it seems that the feedback from the community is very positive. Now, dealing with the with the budget. Obviously, in 2022, there really was no budget because the program was at its infancy, and it grew in 2023, where we only had about $2,600 that we spent on that year just trying to get the program off the ground. And fiscal year 24 was really the first full year that we had all of our expenditures in the budget. That includes $1.3 million for personnel costs. Like most departments, it's about 80 to 88% of the cost is personnel. Secondly, we had about $234,000 in different expenses for non-personnel. This included the equipment, the vehicles that we purchased, the e-bikes, clothing, any equipment that they would need was purchased with that money, for a combined expenditures of $1.7 million. For fiscal year 2025, it's going to be very similar. We expect to have all 20 positions filled, so the personnel cost will be a little bit higher, $1.6 million. The $20,000 that you see on the non-personnel is going to be for vests. One of our past practices, obviously, police officers get bulletproof vests because you don't know when they're going to encounter somebody that may want to hurt them. Our CSOs, if you recall, the park rangers were really kind of built off of that model of our CSO programs. They were given the option, and most CSOs do prefer to wear a vest, which, by the way, now is very, very thin. You can't really tell that they're wearing a vest because it's made of new technology, new material, which is very, very thin, which is great because it's not as heavy as bulletproof vests were 25 years ago when I started. So that $20,000 is for vests if they choose to use one. And then the $62,000 is going to be for additional expenses for a total of $1.69 million for fiscal year 25. This is basically how the park rangers are spread out throughout the city. We have 4 of them at each policing district for a total of 20 park rangers. And obviously, we have parks all over the city. We have parks in every single policing district. So just depending on what part of the city they work, they typically go to the larger parks first, the ones that are utilized by more people, check those out. And then as the need arises, they go to some of the smaller parks. If we have a special event, which we've had several community meetings from the council districts this past year, they will oftentimes request the park rangers, and they will show up to assist the CSOs and other city staff in just having a good, healthy, safe event at the park or whatever establishment they're at. The shifts are 6:30 to 4:30 p.m., 6:30 in the morning to 4:30 p.m. And then the evening shift is from 12 noon to 10 p.m. So there are overlapping hours, but they are working. We do have park rangers working 7 days a week at this point. This is another, I guess I went too fast forward. There we go. That concludes my presentation. One added issue one added piece of equipment that we are going to purchase this next year is provide cell phones for the park rangers. They have been using their personal cell phones. Obviously, throughout the day, they communicate quite regularly with park staff to communicate what's going on or what the needs are if there's any issue at a park. They will also communicate with police supervisors in case there is a problem and they need assistance from the police department. What they also do is they are able to collect evidence. We use an Axon app, which is where we upload pictures and other pieces of evidence. And really, it's not a best practice to use a personal cell phone to collect evidence. So we really want to, and they don't mind, they haven't complained or anything like that. But we've done that for police officers. We would rather pay for the service of having an official department phone to be able to upload that evidence so they're not keeping anything in their personal phones in case that is subpoenaed at any time in the future. So that concludes my presentation. I won't be able to stick around. I do have Lieutenant Brian Baez who can answer questions at the end. I'd be more than happy to answer one or two right now if you have one directly for me. But I do want to thank Desiree Perry, who is my finance manager, she's put a lot of this together and worked directly with Parks to make sure that the funding interdepartment costs have been submitted flawlessly and kept track of. And then Lieutenant Brian Baez, really, he's the one that's put this program together from day one, and now it's a very successful program. We oftentimes get inquiries from other cities wanting to know about our Park Ranger program and how we put that together. So if there's any questions, yes, sir.
Chief, you started by saying that you were very pleased with the way the program's going. What are the metrics of success that we're using on the Park Ranger program to decide how we're doing?
I anticipate us having more useful or tangible metrics this next year. Keep in mind that the last year and a half, we've been putting the program together. Mm-hmm. So the success part was just the fact that we created a program out of scratch. We're able to identify enough adequate personnel, put together the specifications for the park ranger position, develop the training, the uniforms, get the equipment. All that was done very, very quickly. So far, the success is just in the positive comments that we get from the community. It seems that the community really loves the look. They love the park rangers. They love the fact that they're mobile. They were out there during our Support Blue Run, and I tell you what, I get more comments about park rangers that I get from just about any other unit. So I'm basing it off of that. In the future, I would like to see a reduced number of calls at the parks, a reduced number of vandalism incidents, a reduced number of complaints about, say, the unhoused community or trash at the parks, simple things like that, and then also reduction in auto burglaries. That's one of the measures, is that people go and park their vehicles, they go jogging or whatever, they come back and then their car's broken into. Once we see those numbers declining at the parks, we'll know that the Park Ranger program has been a success.
Great, thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
What other training is provided to the park rangers besides the ones you named in your presentation?
They receive training on report writing. They receive training on de-escalation. They receive training on communication skills, how to interact with the public. A lot of it is internal training. For example, how to upload some of the evidence into our network, how to access our report writing system, things like that the police officers typically engage in on a daily basis. But they also get CPR training. If they were to come across a young child who's having a medical episode, they would be able to render aid, things like that. So it's very, very similar to what our CSOs do, community service officers, except they're assigned to the parks.
It's funny that you said that they are, the park rangers are engaging. I ran into a couple of them, and I was trying to have conversation with them and ask them how was it going and things like that, and they were not engaging until I said that I was the chair of this commission. Then the attitude changed.
Then they talked your ear off.
And then they started talking my ear off. So they were not engaging. I am still a resident of Fresno who family visits all the parks around the city. So they have to be a little bit more engaging and not so standoffish.
I agree with you.
And that's the interaction I had. I can't speak for any of the other commissioners, but I was very disappointed that I had to use that I was the chair of this Parks Commission in order for them to engage with me and tell me about all the good things that are happening with the park rangers. So that's something that you might want to think about.
Yeah, that's something we definitely need to work on. One of the peculiar things about the Park Ranger program is it's not just young people. We have a wide array of different experienced people that have put in for that job. I have found that the older folks are more engaging. That this younger generation is a little bit more difficult to, look at them in the eye and have a conversation. Perhaps that's technology or social media or a combination. But I agree with you. Part of the job is a lot of the job. For a police officer, it's estimated that 80% of our job is to communicate just like I'm doing with you right now, and to be able to relay a message, through eye contact and hand movements is very important, and our park rangers should reflect that as well.
So maybe you might want to think about incorporating some type of communication training, some cultural diversity training, things like that, because it was very sad to have to use that I was the chair.
Well, I really hope that was, I think you intimidated them.
and I didn't use that at first. I was just like, hey, it's good to see you guys out, and asking how everything was going, and it was just very standoffish. And then once I said that I was the chair of this commission, then they started talking my ear off like, oh, okay, that's the chair. So let me start telling her, oh, it's a great program and this, and that. So it just wasn't a good experience.
Well, thank you for
me.
pointing that out, and we do want them to be engaging. One of the things that I would like to add in that training budget, there is no budget in fiscal year 25 for training. It's not that we're not doing the training, is that most of our training is done in-house. You know, we have a regional training center, so we have trained instructors within the police department, so that really doesn't cost us anything. And bringing the type of training that you talked about is very cost effective because we typically have something already in the police department that we can use.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am. Anyone else?
I just wanted to point out that public safety has always been a very high priority for all of us here. And I think down the road, we are going to continue to ask the public, what do you think? Because in the past, I've heard a lot of comments in the community that our parks were not safe. And you didn't have a sense of being safe, you know, and the presence of the park rangers will certainly enhance that image. But we have to continue to monitor what happens, or are we having a real impact? Or also, I would be interested, have you had incidents that are very unpleasant that you wish you would have done things differently? We're going to be learning along the way, but I just wanted to thank you for paying a lot of attention to this, primarily to the question of the uniforms. They do look now like park rangers. Thank you very much for your help.
You're very welcome, and thank you all for your support in this endeavor. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to get up here and present. My name is Mark Standriff. I'm the Program Director for Beautify Fresno for the City of Fresno. Before I present, though, I also, just on a personal note, want to thank you for presenting the first round of funding for the cultural arts grants. As a former executive director for a number of nonprofit theaters, I've applied for and received grants at the local, state, and even national level. So I know what all the applicants have been going through, and I know the kind of anxiety they're feeling right now, but I want to wish everybody the best of luck, and congratulations in advance. Beautify Fresno is Mayor Dyer's initiative to improve the city's curb appeal by combining city resources like crews and sanitation crews and equipment to eliminate trash, graffiti, and blight, while also providing community-based cleanup and beautification projects. So if we go through just a few of the highlights from fiscal year 24, we held 150 community-based cleanup and beautification events, and that's a 25% increase over fiscal year 23. 90% of those cleanups happening south of Shaw, and 30% of them happening in Council District 3 in Southwest Fresno alone. We had over 9,000 individual volunteers take part in these events, and 140 different groups, many of them representing communities such as Hispanic, Hmong, and Punjabi. We had total collection just from the volunteer events alone of 125,000 pounds of trash and removing over 300,000 square feet of graffiti. We also continued our neighborhood blitzes, and these are intensive infrastructure repairs that we do in conjunction, in partnership with our Public Works Department, street maintenance crews, and then come in on the weekends and then provide litter abatement through our volunteers, working very closely with our council districts to have them recommend to us their greatest areas of need. We're also really excited to have 2 new cross-promotional programming opportunities that happened just in the last couple of months or so. We had our very first spring clean and swap, and this was a combination of cleanup and clothing donation event with an organization called Just Porch It. These folks are very much related to textile recycling and to reclamation, and we were at Manchester Center, cleaned up the area there, and our volunteers brought in and we were able to recycle and repurpose over 600 pieces of clothing just from that event alone. Clothing that would normally either end up on the street someplace or in a garbage can inadvertently. And so that we feel is an event that we'd like to repeat, as well as something that happened just this last weekend at Roding Park, Pick Up with Pups. And this is a partnership with the Fresno Animal Center, where we had 60 volunteers come out to pick up the park and walk dogs from the Animal Center at the same time, with the possibility of providing information and even adoption there on site. So the 60 volunteers, we had 12 dogs, 330 pounds of trash collected, and 1 adoption so far. So we're very excited about this and already discussing the opportunity of holding this event at one of our 11 dog parks around the city sometime in the fall. We were also in fiscal year 24, the very first California city designated as a Clean California community. And this is in cooperation with the Clean California campaign through the governor's initiative in the state of California, and also Keep California Beautiful. So we were very pleased and honored to be able to be the first to raise our hand to get that designation. And I think it just speaks to the ongoing work that we're doing here in the city to make Fresno a cleaner, greener, more beautiful place to live. Now moving on to the proposed fiscal year 2025 budget. We're asking for approximately $1.5 million in Measure P funding, which again constitutes just a little over 1/3 of the total budget, with roughly about 63% of the rest of our budget coming from the general fund, DPU fees, and ARPA funding. Our total budget proposed for fiscal year 25 is $3.98 million. Now, from the Measure P funding that's coming out of Category 5, the biggest change is that Measure P, the funding is moving from the ATP Trails and San Joaquin River Conservancy portion of the budget and entirely put into street beautification. The largest group of expenses, as you'll see, are in personnel. We have 2 crews consisting of laborers, utility lead workers, and sanitation operators. Those costs have gone up slightly from fiscal year 24. Landfill tipping fees, which is the money that we have to pay to a commercial vendor who will take the trash from it and then dispose of it properly. We also have fleet services where in the maintenance and fuel charges for vehicles, we're actually adding a vehicle to help our crews get out there and manage their collections properly. The total budget for PR and marketing includes outreach and the branding. We're actually going to be presenting a new website coming up in fiscal year 25, along with a new logo that we think hopefully is a little, as you can see from the slide, I created it basically on PowerPoint, and that's, not necessarily the best way to go if you really want to present something to the community. And we had some of our graphic artists that work within the city provide us with a new one. We're very excited about going through there. So at this time, I'd like to open up for any questions that you may have about the budget or the activities that Beautify Fresno works on a daily basis. Like Chief Balderrama, I'm actually directing a show at a local theater, and I have a rehearsal where I have actors waiting for me right now. So,
I have a quick question.
Yes.
In the miscellaneous item, you have $54,300, event management, travel, and conference membership. Can you explain that a little bit? What type of membership? What type of travel and conference?
Yeah. So we belong to Keep America Beautiful, and we're an affiliate of Keep America Beautiful. So that membership, there's a yearly cost that goes into that. And plus, we also have the chance to present and to visit and take part in the national conference that takes place every single year. This past year, we were able to save some money because it was in San Diego, and I actually had the pleasure of presenting what I hope was a very popular workshop on volunteer engagement and retention. But next year, that trip is going to be in Washington, D.C., so the expenses are going to be a little bit higher. And then event management is just for our bigger events where we have the opportunity to bring people in. We want to make sure that they have a good time. And so we'll provide some refreshments for them, usually have a DJ to have music and activities provided by our Parks Department staff. So those are the folks, and we do 4 of those major events every single year.
And can you also explain the $100,000 for community outreach materials and marketing? Is that primarily just like flyers being mailed out or mailers, or what does that consist of?
So as I mentioned before, part of that goes into new website and new branding that comes out. But also because of the materials that we provide on a regular basis as part of community outreach, we attend a number of special programs that happen, sometimes job fairs, sometimes our local schools will have community engagement events where we'll get out there and we provide cards that are available that have not only a QR code that gives us the opportunity to have them volunteer for our program on site. So all of those things go into that. And then there will also be some time for us to utilize money for TV, radio, and billboard ads to continue to promote the program and invite more people to take part.
How are you reaching the audience who is not social media savvy, or who doesn't have social media, or who's not attending? Is there any type of mailers going out so they can become volunteers for this program? How are we reaching that audience?
We find that mailers aren't as effective as you think they might be. And I've done direct mail for a variety of different organizations, nonprofits, and even other kinds of like political campaigns in the past. I find that it's always face-to-face introductions, so I talk a lot. And I go around to any meeting that anybody wants to have me there. I'm like the old Fresno State football coach, Pat Hill. Anybody, anytime, anywhere. So I talk to church groups, I go to schools, talk to social clubs like the Rotary. And who else? The Elks, the Kiwanis. Anytime you've got a meeting where I can talk a little bit, and I tend to preach a little bit too, so I'm evangelical in my approach. I want to get out there and connect with as many people as I can, because I find that the one-on-one contact is much more effective, because unfortunately with a lot of these mailers, especially in this upcoming presidential year, unfortunately a lot of those mailers end up getting shuffled into the garbage or the recycling pretty quickly. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mark, I want to start by thanking you for this presentation and for the work of your staff and others on putting it together. What percentage of the Beautify Fresno budget comes from Measure P funds? I know you say it's primarily funded by
it's just a little bit more. It's roughly about 36%.
36%.
64 then comes from the general fund, and as I mentioned, some ARPA funding that's left over, and then fees that are collected through the Department of Public Utilities.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much. Applicants, good luck. We're all counting on you. Thanks.
All right, good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Scott Mosier, Public Works Director, and here to talk with you about the proposed Public Works budget for the upcoming fiscal year, and to go over some highlights of this current year. It's been a pleasure to be with you in past meetings and talk about the FY24 projects and programs. We, as a department, our team enjoys working in partnership, of course, with Director Aguirre and the Parks Department team. It's really a seamless interface between park staff with recreation and facilities and programming and everything that happens at the parks, and our landscape maintenance teams for mowing programs, as far as irrigation repairs and prioritizing that work. And as Mr. Standriff shared, also lots of work in partnership with Beautify Fresno. So this past year, some big accomplishments that you can see around the community. A lot of our work is on capital construction projects, so here are 5 significant highlights. We talked before about the Barstow protected bike lanes, which is one component of the Bucket 5 program for safe walking biking trails. That's both Class 1 off-street as well as Class 4 on-street. That's substantially complete. Also Midtown Trail coming along. That's a very complex project involving numerous agencies for approvals and permitting, ranging from Caltrans, Fresno County, the Irrigation District, even the railroads, portions of the project that run along the railroad right-of-way. McKinley Avenue, for example, has a railroad line that's immediately south of the canal, and the segment 4 along McKinley required permitting and approvals through the railroad. But segment 1A, now complete, open to the public. Segment 4 along McKinley, that's broken ground, contractor is working. We'll see that come to fruition this fall. Also, something that the City Council approved this past year, we had a $1.2 million total allocation for major street beautification. We'll go through some highlights there of completed work. And then one of our smaller items I'd consider a highlight for us. In the budget for this year, $100,000 had been approved for ATP Trail urban greening. That's, again, one of the components within the Bucket 5 program. And that was a project in partnership with Tree Fresno. Willow Avenue Trail existed near Fresno State, and it was an area that lacked irrigation, and we were able to partner on that with some Cal Fire trees and Tree Fresno coming in, and the city able to partner and deliver that project. We've also talked before about the staffing. So another area of success is having the citywide trail maintenance crew all in place on a regular cycle, less than 60 days as far as the frequency, ranging from areas like Southeast Fresno, the McKenzie Trail, up to Northeast, handling things like the Sugar Pine Trail, Herndon Trail segments. And then also the San Joaquin River Parkway Maintenance Trail Crew. That's a 4-person crew that was new for FY24, dedicated using the San Joaquin River Parkway component of that program, all in place and working every day. And then also lastly, in the first category, Bucket 1, funding, of course, housed in the Parks Department budget. But we oversee those operations. We were able to add this year a 12-person mow crew consisting of various classifications, and then 2 irrigation specialists. So, and really the difference in the measurement that we see out there is the number of parks and locations that we touch. On the next slide, let's see, we'll get that one. There we go. So I can tell you, prior to Measure P, working hand in hand with Director Aguirre, the list of parks with turf rehabilitation efforts might be two locations prior to that, but now through Measure P, with that expanded effort, you can really see the long list of parks we've been able to impact. In turf rehabilitation, typically we're talking about many of these have aeration and reseeding, fertilizing. Some of those are, say, 2 out of 3, depending upon the needs of that area. But we're really proud of that effort, and look forward in the next year to adding a similar group. Likewise on irrigation, a number we could have included a slide each on a number of these of photos and complexities, whether we're talking the wiring and issues, the older systems. So a wide variety of improvements that we were able to accomplish with our landscape division. Next up, just some brief photos. These are some highlights. The commission saw plans and renderings before. So that's Barstow. Moving on, we talked before about Ventura Kings Canyon, now known as Cesar Chavez Boulevard. About just all the replanting and restoration of landscapes that really had not been touched to this level really since, in many cases, since they were first installed for major street beautification. Likewise, the downtown median islands, we really were able to positively impact all of the downtown medians, whether we're talking Van Ness, in the Cultural Arts District, or Fresno, Tulare, O Street, numerous locations. Our largest project in major street beautification was in Central Fresno, Shaw, and Cedar areas, including landscape boulders. Most of the dollars were spent on tree planting and irrigation, both along Shaw and Cedar, and really big difference in the area. We look forward to those canopies, those trees growing, increasing the shade canopy in the city, and all those positive benefits of that, whether we're talking reducing the urban heat island effect, air quality. Another prominent location right at Blackstone and Herndon. This was one that had a lot of blight and just not a good-looking location on the northeast corner. So this was a measure we were able to implement that not only beautified the area, but also even reduced some future maintenance with the hardscape. West Avenue is one of the later ones we completed, again, south of Shaw. And then on to San Joaquin River Parkway program. We talked about the full-time maintenance crew who's now working. I'll go over numbers for the FY25 budget, but we not only have the existing crew working, but then also a capital project allocation proposed. And again, all of this is in partnership, coordination with the San Joaquin River Conservancy and then also the San Joaquin River Parkway Trust. There is a draft report that was completed by a local consulting firm, QK, and we're waiting for our new executive officer for the Conservancy to come on board to finalize that. So that has now occurred, and we look forward to finalizing that list, meaning what deferred maintenance projects do we focus that effort on, whether it's irrigation system replacements, ranging from fencing or tree planting, just numerous activities and items in that area. So on to the budget in 25. As mentioned, you can see our largest costs are in non-personnel. That means contract construction, and then in some cases engineering, design consulting firms. Personnel, $797,300. That's primarily in our operations for the maintenance crews that were described, and then also the interdepartmental, the ID charges. So total, $8.5 million in Measure P. This is Bucket 5 category. As discussed, Director Gary and then Ed Chenevier went over the Bucket 1 category for existing park maintenance operations. That's where you find our landscape division for all the mow crews and irrigation repairs. As far as total positions, we've presented in years past. I know the Commission is familiar with the growth that we experienced, adding irrigation repair staff, adding the mow crews, putting the trail crews in place. So not a big change proposed in 25. The budget proposes one new irrigation specialist dedicated to the San Joaquin River Parkway Trail crew. Otherwise, the budget holds flat with other positions. And then lastly, I wanted to go over capital projects in Measure P Bucket 5. We've discussed these in the past. So you can see the first two are Midtown Trail segments. These Measure P dollars go hand in hand with federal and state grants, along with Measure C trail money. So although those two total up to over $2.5 million, they go with over $20 million in the other sources. So Measure P really helped deliver and make sure those projects can go. Likewise, Southwest Fresno Green Trails, that's under construction with Phase 1. Phase 2 is in the 25 budget. This goes along with state funding through the TCC program. So that'll deliver a trail in the California or Cesar Chavez and West area, heading east towards Fresno Street along an area known as Church Road, which is kind of a dirt roadway, but this will put a beautiful trail in place. One to highlight, Again, the commission I know is familiar with Measure P being eligible for litter control and beautification along major streets and highways in the city. So the FY25 proposed budget proposes to include $355,500 of Measure P Bucket 5 towards freeway litter control. These dollars will go with $200,000 from Caltrans, and all told, that will improve our freeway litter control cycles from what's currently once a month on the 99, 168, and 180. That will bring Highway 99 to weekly service for litter control along these really key corridors for people entering our community. And also, it will provide weekly service on the 41 corridor as well. A little bit of extra cost, just close out on Barstow bike lanes. Again, we're re-upping dollars for partnerships on the ATP Trail and Urban Greening Program to provide irrigation, be able to work with some of our nonprofits and community groups, even Beautify Fresno on some tree planting. Again, mentioned the San Joaquin River Parkway dollars, major street beautification, Fancher Creek Trail, and then also to close out Bucket 5, that does include $1.3 million for the Milburn Overlook redesign and reconstruction. That's actually a Parks Department capital project, but we wanted to present that for sake of completeness in the $7.9 million. And then lastly, the most impactful items. The department already went over personnel. The utility line, that does include the water and PG&E charges, median island and trail irrigation, and you can see the balance of the costs there. And big kudos also to my administrator, Yvonne Diaz, who really made all of this possible. We are here for any questions.
Scott, again, thank you and your staff for putting this together. It's greatly appreciated. And I'm just going to ask the same question. What percentage of the Public Works budget comes from Measure P? Do you know?
So for Public Works, the total budget for the department is over $300 million between operating and capital. Within Measure P Bucket 5, that's only the 7.9 that you see. Mm-hmm. So that is about 2.5% total.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the section of an area you finished on Cesar E. Chavez Boulevard from H to Maple, from Maple to Chestnut, it's a terrible area. It really needs a lot of work. And I was hoping to see it in your new proposed recommendations. I did notice that you have some money, something you call major street beautification, $400,000. And then you have $300,000 for Fancher Creek, Chestnut to Peach. There's an allocation there, $300,900. Well, that 400, you probably explained it, but I didn't hear you. What does that include? How do we apply for them? Not we, but I mean sectors of the city. Can they ask for beautifying their neighborhoods with that money?
And typically, so that's generally used, it's on the major street corridors based upon the Measure P language and eligibility. Really, we were able to get that far down Kings Canyon to Maple with funding we had, and I absolutely agree. Continuing on Kings Canyon makes sense. And really, as far as priorities and areas, that's really why I'd see, as staff were here, the departments are here before the commission for budget recommendations and priorities. So if that were, for example, if that were a suggested priority, that's the feedback we could obtain through those motions and recommendations.
Yes, the area looks very, very bad. And I did appreciate the questions about what percentage of the budget is the Measure P component. I had the same question, and maybe for the future, it might be helpful that we get the total picture. Because I know that we deal with Measure P, but we do want to see the whole picture. And I had the same question relating to the other gentleman that also did not have that information. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Question, are there any other trails or bike lanes that are planned in Southwest Fresno besides the ones that you mentioned tonight and the ones from the TCC grant?
Yes, excellent question. So the department just applied for and was awarded a new project, actually a couple new projects that they don't involve Measure P at the moment, but one is Church Avenue Complete Streets, and that will be from Martin Luther King Jr. over to Elm Avenue. The city's just been in receipt of that. Just about to go into construction, more bike lanes on Church. From there west to the new community college campus and also on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. So those are new bike lanes that would be going in Southwest Fresno.
Thank you. Any other questions for Scott? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, I'm back. So I'm going to bring it home with the Parks Department budget. I'm going to try to keep this moving pretty quickly. I know we're excited to hear about the cultural arts. But if I gloss over anything, please just ask and we'll go into more detail. And of course, we can follow up on the 29th as well. So with that, we'll go through the Parks Department budget. Of course, this commission has jurisdiction over Measure P as well as the entire Parks Department budget recommendation with regard to the ordinance. So with that, we'd like to start, as always, by talking about our vision. So our vision, of course, is to provide, to enhance the quality of life for the community by providing safe, clean, accessible parks and community centers, offering diverse programs and recreational activities, and fostering meaningful partnerships. Here we have the Parks Department org chart. We are organized into roughly 5 operating areas. Administration includes customer service, outreach, fiscal, grant, contract, personnel, GIS, so that's our mapping technologies, as well as Measure P administration. Operations is divided into our 5 main operating areas. Those are 4 geographical areas, A through D, as well as our regional parks and Camp Fresno. Maintenance and capital improvements includes project administration for all parks, capital projects, and preventative and property maintenance. Sports and recreation programs, that's youth, adult, action sports, as well as our bicycle pedestrian safety program and our aquatics program. And community services, that houses our after-school senior science adaptive, so that's programs that adapt our recreation programs for persons of all abilities. Job training and career development, as well as our Spark after-school partnership with Fresno Unified and our neighborhood safety and community engagement program for violence reduction. So we'll go into a little bit of detail about our fiscal year 2024 accomplishments. In the current fiscal year, on the slide before you here, we're highlighting our capital improvement accomplishments for FY24. In the current year, of course, we've opened Trolley Park, our first net new green space funded with Measure P at Van Ness and Weldon. And we also have 5 new parks in construction or pre-construction as we speak. Those include the south building of the Paul Capriolio Community Center at Bulldog and 6th, Dolores Huerta Park at Milburn and Dakota, South Peach Avenue Park at the Brawley Alignment, Broadway Parkway and Broadway and Elizabeth, formerly referred to as South Tower Park, and MLK Magnet Corps Park at California and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. 2 additional new parks are in design. Those include the Citywide Senior Center, as well as a new park at 11th and Tulare. This year, we completed 20 capital improvement projects in total, and 15 additional improvements are underway. Those sorry, I got a little turned around here. We have approximately $50 million worth of projects about to enter construction or pre-construction. So you'll see on the later slide that it looks like we have a very large capital budget, but a really large amount of that capital budget is just about to get encumbered through the bidding and award process for new park construction. Our capital team also was hugely busy this year with community engagement, having hosted 73 events over the course of the year. And I have lots of notes on this one if you have any questions for me. All right. On the programming side, the Youth Sports Fee Waiver Program continued implementation, reducing financial barriers to participation in our youth sports programs. Camp Fresno Youth Camp registration continues strong. You see on the slide here, it says over 900 registered. I wrote down as of Friday, 1,214, and of course, Director Aguirre just told you it's up to 1,255 registered participants this year. Of course, an incredible program for youth to experience the outdoors. Our bicycle and pedestrian safety program was expanded this year through a partnership with Fresno Unified. And we also saw significant growth, as you can see through like all of the photos on our social media in our adaptive recreation program this year. Another major highlight was our our customer service and community engagement program improvements. Large expansion in access to reservations at pavilions and neighborhood parks this year. We actually are at about a 35% increase on field reservations compared to the same time in fiscal year 2023, owing in major part to the rollout of new processes for social media as well as online reservation enhancements that we did this past year. Just a stellar customer service team that we have here at the Parks Department. And then we also continue to successfully administer significant grant funding. I have another slide about that in a little bit, but we really want to make sure that we leverage those Measure P dollars to their fullest possible extent. Onto the budget. This is a very, very high-level overview of the Parks Department budget, showing year-over-year comparisons from fiscal year 2022 all the way through the FY25 proposed, the mayor's proposed budget. Notable is you'll see a very large ramp up over the course of that time period in both operating and capital expenditures. And then for FY25, we do expect the growth in operating expenditures to level off, coming in at approximately $59.2 million, or about $1.8 million lower than in fiscal year 24, primarily due to the expiration of one-time funds included in last year's budget. The capital program, as I indicated previously, is also expected to level off a little bit. And that really is because we are now spending capital funds almost as fast as we're getting them in. And so you'll see those contracts go to City Council very soon for some of those major construction projects. Our positions in fiscal year 25 are not anticipated to change from fiscal year 2024. The positions on this chart that you have before you are actually in full-time equivalents. So that means that the new positions that were added in fiscal year 2024, and there were 12 of those, were budgeted last year at 9 months, and then this year they're budgeted at 12 months. So the increase from 159 to 163 represents essentially staffing all of those positions at 12 months as opposed to 9 months in fiscal year 24, and that standard process for new positions that are awarded during the budget process. It should also be noted that of the 162 positions, there are 10 that are not currently funded, and so those won't be filled unless we secure some additional grant funding or contract funding. Most impactful items in the fiscal year 2025 budget are presented on this slide. You can see, of course, our two largest park projects, Dolores Huerta Park and South Beach Avenue Park, both exceed $11 million. The Radio Park Rehabilitation Project, over $8 million. Cultural Arts at $5.6 million. the Senior Activity Center at 5.4, and the city has actually also applied for an additional $20 million loan from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development through the Community Development Block Grant Section 108 loan program to complete the funding package for the senior center. Finally, utilities, as always, are a major expense for the department. Though we have seen that growth in costs slow, in no small part to our partners in the Public Works Department and their sustainability division's energy efficiency improvements, which implemented energy efficiency controls and LED lighting at, I believe it was 50 plus parks over the course of FY23 primarily. I'm stuck. Next slide. I wore it out. There we go. All right, so this slide shows you that nearly $28.5 million of our department's funding is made up of state and federal grants, including most notably the American Rescue Plan Act funds and the state of California's Department of Parks and Recreation's Proposition 68 grant, both of which are funding significant capital improvements system-wide. Ooh, now it's working. While the majority of the fiscal year 2025 budget is allocated to maintaining existing programs and service levels, there are two notable exceptions. The first of which is that the department proposes to continue to invest in customer service enhancements through software that will improve both the reservation system and on-site check-in, which will allow us to better track and report performance data, including for Measure P reporting. Our staff does a lot of manual counting of folks that are coming in and out of our community centers. They do a great job of it, but we can achieve a lot of efficiencies by digitizing that process. The department also intends to expand its youth sports offerings to include both cricket and futsal in fiscal year 2025. This slide is specific to Measure P. It's very similar to the first slides that we showed you, but it goes into more detail showing which funding sources are used for Parks' various divisions as defined in our accounting system. This year's budget, I'll note, was also a very heavy lift for our budget and finance staff. Because in addition to creating those new sub-funds to track highest needs funding, we also created quite a few new sections so that we could really clearly articulate all of the costs down to the individual section level. It was a very intensive exercise, but allows for a much cleaner report here and for the faster processing of audits and reporting. The majority of our Measure P revenues, of course, are allocated directly into programs, services, custodial, maintenance, and park ranger programs. And these next few slides will go into the capital allocations that you can see on the second to the last slide there, or line. So this is the first of 4 slides showing how our Measure P expenditure category 1 is allocated for capital projects in existing parks. It shows which funding source, citywide or highest needs, is used. And this year we've also added a column to show where there are other sources allocated for any specific project. It should be noted that these slides present only the fiscal year 2025 budget. So if a project was awarded for construction in fiscal year 24, for example, those dollars will not be displayed since they will have been encumbered through a contract out of the fiscal year 2024 funds. So you might see some really big projects that have really small numbers here. That's because it's all locked up in the contract from fiscal year 2024. Notably on this slide, the Think White Splash Pad project is expected to be completed by the end of this summer. And the department was also fortunate to be included in the city's Community Development Block Grant Program to receive construction funds for the Bigby Villa Tot Lot Improvement Project, which we expect to be awarded by the end of this fiscal year from HUD. I won't go into all of the detail. There's lots of these, but I can expand on any one of them that you have any questions about. On this next slide here, this is our second slide of Category 1 capital expenditures. Notably, our Holmes Park roof repair project has completed. That is pending closeout. Several of the other projects here are also funded for construction. On this third slide of our Category 1 existing park funds, many projects are are in or will very soon be in construction, including a suite of them at Roding Park. So we have the Roding Tot Lot replacement and ADA project that's going to put all new accessible paths and completely replace some of our most aged play structures out there at Roding Park, and that has been awarded for construction. Our Roding tennis courts are just about, I think they just finished resurfacing, or they will be in about 1 or 2 weeks, we'll have that one wrapped up. And our Roding Dog Park project is wrapped up and is just pending project closeout. And on this last slide of the Measure P Category 1 projects, there's one of the notable ones here, our Willow and Balch Tot Lot replacement. That was a play structure that was damaged in a fire a couple years ago, and with Measure P funds, we were able to appropriate enough funding to not just replace that, but also bring it up to current standard in terms of accessibility and safe play surfacing and shade. And that one is just about to go into construction next week, or by the end of the month, the 28th. Yep. All right, and then last year, we have Measure P Expenditure Category 2. So these are for acquisition and development of new parks. And notably on this slide, I've talked about them a little bit before, but our Paul Capriolio Center South Building, Peach Park Phase 1, Broadway Parquet, and of course Van Ness and Weldon are all either underway or just recently finished construction. And then, of course, we have some other major projects on here, including the Senior Center and 11th and Tulare. So with that, this next set of slides will review some of the recommendations that this commission made earlier in the budget season when we came before you, I believe it was a month or two ago. In slide number 1, here we have $350,000 to begin assessment and development of long-term implementation strategies that positively impact land, air, and water conservation. The Department of Public Works budget does include $392,300 for the Sustainability Division, which is aimed at ensuring city facilities are aligned with best practices in sustainability and resource management. And like I said, it was hugely beneficial to the Parks Department in helping keep our utilities costs down as well as our carbon footprint. Number 2 there, $3 million for nonprofits to establish the Dr. Francine Oputa Fund to provide after-school recreation and community services and workforce development programming. The fiscal year 2025 budget, it does include $66,000 for new youth programming, as previously discussed. And of course, the Fresno Arts Council, will hear from them a little later today about their grant-making program. However, the balance of Category 3 for programs and services is allocated to maintain operations that were initially funded in fiscal year 2023. Number 3, $50,000 for translating Measure P information into other languages. The fiscal year 2025 budget includes $46,300 for marketing and outreach, of which $20,400 is specifically designated for translation and interpretation. And also each capital project also is allocated funding for outreach and communications, which include translation into a minimum of 4 languages. Number 4, Public Works to be allocated $200,000 to establish a new urban forester position. In fiscal year 25, the proposed budget for Public Works includes 5 full-time employees for the tree program for management of the urban forest, including 2 arborists. In addition, over $2.1 million will be available for the preventative geo-based tree trimming program to be on a 13-year trim cycle with available funding. And number 5, $2 million for nonprofits and other community organizations to provide after-school recreation and community services and workforce development programming, similar to number 2 on the previous slide. The balance of Category 3 for parks programs and services is allocated to programs that were initially funded in fiscal year 23, and the city does continue to seek ways to expand its youth offerings and is excited for the first round of cultural arts funds to be awarded, which we'll hear about soon. Okay, and then our PRAC recommendations. This is the final slide and concludes our presentation. At this time, we'd like to ask the commission to make any additional motions that you would like presented to the City Council for consideration with regards to the Measure P budget specifically. And at the next meeting, there will be one final opportunity to make budget recommendations prior to the City Council Parks budget hearing. And at that time, we will ask the Commission to recommend the Parks fiscal year 2025 budget to City Council for adoption. And with that, I'm available for questions. We also have staff here from multiple parks departments to assist as well.
Thank you for that presentation. I have a couple of questions. I noticed on capital projects, there's Hinton improvements. So Hinton Center is going to have improvements. What type of improvements? Because from my understanding, that's not a city park. So what type of improvements are going to be taking place there?
Great question. The Hinton improvements refers to Hinton Park, which is a city asset. The Hinton Park actually had a grant award from the state of California a while back for futsal improvements, a restroom, and field lighting. This part of the project will wrap up the scope of that project with drought-tolerant landscaping to close out that grant scope.
Thank you. And I also have another question. I see Frank H. Ball has improvements. Does that include rehab to the bathroom, or are those just improvements around the park?
Great question. So Frank H. Ball is part of the West Fresno Community Center Rehabilitation Project. Those funds in Frank H. Ball improvements, as well as Sunset improvements, Mariella Brown and Maxie, are part of that project. So that project will put together a master plan and a phased implementation approach for how we improve all 4 of those parks over the next few years.
So my other question is, are those 4 parks that are in Southwest Fresno, are there any other parks in Southeast or any other part of town that are put together like that to come up with the plan to revitalize them, or is it done on an individual park basis?
So those 4 parks were primarily chosen because of their status in the ranking exercise performed by this commission with regard to the highest needs definition. There were a few other parks that were also doing some master plan work for. Those include Romaine Park, Dickey Park, and Holmes Park. We also did a master planning exercise as part of the highest needs definition rollout.
But those parks were done individually. They were not grouped together, correct?
Right. Yeah.
So
and
can you explain why these 4 parks are grouped together?
These 4 are primarily for efficiencies with regard to contracting under one community outreach project, and so that those 4 parks can be designed as a system. So we know that we can't serve everybody at every single park, because we can't put every single potential amenity at any given park. But we want to design the system in such a way that we can offer amenities to as many different user groups as possible.
So parks and Holmes and Romaine are not that far from each other. So how come those 2 were not combined?
I'm not sure why those 2 weren't combined outside of timing
to implement
issues.
the same process that's going on with the West Fresno parks.
Right. Yeah. Again, so Holmes Park specifically, I can speak to these in a little bit closer detail, which might help shed a little light on them. Holmes Park, in particular, that one was designed in the master plan. We found that it really didn't need as much sort of
past master plan or the new one that's coming out?
The sort of the site planning that we did as part of the highest needs definition. So Holmes Park is one that the community output didn't ultimately recommend like a major overhaul for Holmes Park. So that one has sort of more targeted improvements, which begin with the restroom project. So bringing on a consultant and a engineering firm that can specifically target that amenity is more beneficial than going through essentially a phase 2 where we're master planning and providing engineering designs for the whole park.
Okay. Because the 4 parks that are grouped together need a major overhaul. So trying to understand why they're grouped together instead of not being done individually, from your explanation that you just gave, I'm still a little confused about the process. And I noticed that a lot of the capital projects under expenditure category 1 only says improvements, but it doesn't detail what type of improvements. That would be helpful to this commission to know the details of those improvements as we make our recommendations. So is there a way that we can get that in detail?
Absolutely, yes. So upon the adoption of the fiscal year 2025 budget, we do intend to come back to this commission to do a more in-depth overview of all of the capital projects, as we have done previously, to go into more detail about each one. This one is based on the way that those projects are described in the city's budget system, but we can go about getting a little bit more detail on those slides for you.
I think that would be helpful to this commission as we start thinking about recommendations to send to City Council, that we will know what improvements are being done in these parks, so we don't make motions or recommendations to send to Council for improvements that are already ongoing. So I think that would be very helpful to the commission, and that will be all for my questions so far. I will open it up to the rest of the commissioners.
Ed, again, thanks for the work that went into developing the budget and then developing the presentation of the budget. A quick question. I kind of want to go back to very early slides, and we don't have to flip back to them because I know they'll be hard, but there were slides 2 and 3, which were Measure P expenditure category 1 and category 2. And it's honestly just for clarification and to understand the vernacular that's being used here. In category 1, you have capital projects within the Parks Department that total about 4.2 million and 13 million. And then in category 2, 13 million and 12 million. But then as we go down to capital projects, we have these sort of generic numbers that look very similar: 41.9, 41.6, 41.5, 41.4. What do those numbers in capital projects? I understand the ones within the Parks Department. I don't understand the numbers within capital projects. I just wondered.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in previous years, some of our Measure P budget was budgeted for the category 1 and 2 into the separate departments. We've been trying to bring that kind of home to the Parks Department for the sake of clarity in accounting, because all the revenues are budgeted here, so we'll match them with the expenditures so that we can balance the fund. This year, since the Capital Projects Department is so new, their expenditures for capital administration delivery are budgeted in the Capital Projects Department specifically for the project managers that are supporting Measure P projects. So those 4 represent capital project delivery split across those 4 sub-funds.
So that's a percentage of personnel costs?
It is,
From
yeah.
understanding? Okay.
Yes.
And then one other question. You put up a slide that was an org chart, and on that org chart there is a Measure P administration position. Is that?
Right, yep,
Yeah,
oh, and that's that's Sarah Gaitan here.
Hi, Sarah.
Yep.
Just out of curiosity then, does that position bill out to the other agencies that utilize Measure P funds? I'm assuming that you're sort of the oversight of all funds. So this exists within Parks Department's budget, but then Beautify Fresno, Public Works, other police department are utilizing Measure P dollars as well. Do we bill that?
The position is 100% funded inside of the Parks Department. And like I said, most of those expenditures, with the exception of Category 5, are also housed within the Parks Department budget to the extent that we can keep them there so that we have clarity in that fund. But to your point, we do try to strike a balance when it comes to budgeting a position between budgeting it in a way that is 100% accurate to the way that they're costing their time, and then also balancing, the need for the administrative burden of having, someone with 10 different, sub-funds.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Pillowbus Park has been improved substantially. And by the way, you listed the Mosqueda Center also as having had some improvements in terms of the quality of the grass and all that. But it doesn't show at all that has been improved. the one that does truly show is Phillips Park. Maybe one you put a lot of seeds, the other one, I don't know what you did. But anyway, just wanted to make that observation. With Phillips Park, the community already started using the facility. In fact, on Mother's Day, they had a wonderful tournament, beautiful, a lot of families, and I'm sure the local economy benefits when folks from out of the city come to participate in those tournaments. The concern I have is that some members of a soccer league, an adult league that had previously been using that field, I think they were probably waiting for the improvements to come around so that they would have more access to that soccer field. And evidently, for some reason, they have been told that the soccer field is no longer available. The other part that I realized that we have to do is, in order to sustain the good quality of the grass, it cannot be abused. In other words, there has to be an opportunity for certain days for the grass to grow, and I get it. So in that context, what is going to be the next opportunity for the soccer leagues to be able to have more soccer space where they can play? We still have the same problem. I know slowly but surely we're adding some space, but how fast is that solution in view?
In terms of more space for soccer, we do
Yes.
have several projects underway which will add soccer. Of course, South Peach Avenue Park. We have a project in design at Ted C. Wills to add green space there to the center. Dolores Huerta Park will have green space area as well. There's some major rehabilitation ones that I'm leaving out, I'm sure. Radio, yep, Radio Park, of course, is going to be fully rehabilitated as part of that Proposition 68 grant.
Is there one on Orangewood and Church is there a small park facility there that they're going to be building soccer fields? Or is that taken off or not?
Church in Northwood?
Church, Orangewood, I think it's called in Church.
Yeah, there was a Prop 68 grant submitted years ago, but it is a parcel of land that we own. We were just talking about it earlier today. But I think the biggest thing when it comes to soccer in the fields are lights. If you look at a lot of our soccer community, they're trying to utilize our facilities at night. We have a lot of green space without light, so we have the problem with more teams than we have lit fields. So that's one of the things that we're exploring at this point, looking at existing parks with potential lighting options that will allow for the soccer teams to use other, I'll say unused green space that are in the evenings. Right now, to be honest with you, the folks are competing for the Pillabos, the Romaine, the Holmes, Fink White, anything with lights, JSK. Those are the popular, and again, it's not just soccer, it's football, it's cricket, anything with lights. As you know, as we get into the summer months, it gets hot. No one's going to be out there at 2 o'clock playing when it's 110. So night is more attractive. But again, the problem is we have a lot of green space without the lights, and that's what we got to get to.
And I understand that El Redca also needs lightings, and I've heard some people that they just wait around and cannot use the facilities in the evening. I just wanted to point out the urgency of addressing that, and I know you've heard this before, and I know that in our own master plan, we identified soccer as the fastest growing sport, and therefore, I just wanted to stress, within the context of us putting budgetary recommendations, we want to see, is there something we can do to maximize to expedite the delivery of more soccer fields? I wanted to make that observation. The other point I wanted to make, Madam Chair, is I noticed your comment, and I don't have it in front of me, but we're on the $3 million that this commission approved to recommend to council under a fund of Dr. Apura. I know we had a conversation that was not intended to be in lieu of the arts allocation. And I see your comment there on the side that you said there will be an allocation of $5 million or maybe more in the arts category. And we say that's wonderful, but that's like for a different purpose. We identified after-school programs, workforce development, other areas where our youth has more important needs. And so I just wanted to make that observation because I know we had the discussion, and you folks are showcasing all the funding sources, and you're doing your job. But I just wanted to not hope it doesn't get misinterpreted that we were asking that funding in lieu of the arts. But we're really talking about the arts funding occurring, but we also would like to see a $3 million fund, or I don't know what you would call it, under the name of Dr. Apuda. So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
I want to say thank you for this very nice budget presentation. I feel like you guys took everything that we asked for and put it in here really nice and easy to read. So I know that takes work. You can see the revenues and the sources and then where it's all going and across all the categories. It's quite complex, but I'm following. So I just wanted to say good job. And I think my question, maybe I missed it because I came in late, was what is the other revenue category? You have a beginning balance, and then the taxes, I'm assuming, is what's projected. And then what is the other revenues?
Yep, yeah, taxes is Measure P, sales tax revenue. Other revenues is primarily interest. Last year, we actually didn't project interest as part of our base budget, but this year we've included that so we have a comprehensive picture of the budget. There is a small amount of additional revenue associated with anticipated fees for the new youth programming that we're implementing out of the Measure P funds. So revenue that's generated from those new programs that are Measure P funded will come back into Measure P.
And then I guess I have one other question is, why is there some funding that isn't allocated, or am I reading this wrong? It's like 88 million, and then it comes out total appropriations 87, is that right?
Right. So that is primarily associated, I believe, with expenditure category 5, with some unallocated funds. And then there's a little bit of remainder funding on some of the other fund sources as well. I believe just when you're building the budget, you try to allocate everything, and then there's a lot of moving pieces, so there is inevitably a little bit of a balance left over.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you please help clarify for me, and pardon me if this was here somewhere and I missed it, how many parks fall under the existing park category and how many fall under the high needs?
That is a great question, and I don't have the exact answer in front of me. Does anybody else happen to? I know it's about 15, I believe 15 to 20 are in the highest needs category, and there's about 65 or 70 in the balance of that category.
Yeah, we'd be happy to get to that number, but it is roughly about 20, I think 21, 22. We'd be happy to give you that number, though, Commissioner.
Yeah.
One more question. How much funds or monies were collected this year from Measure P? That total, I don't recall hearing that total.
Yeah, so this year, of course, is still underway. Mm-hmm. I do have that here somewhere. Give me 1 second. So in fiscal year 2024, we budgeted $48.2 million for Measure P. We are anticipating to receive about $45.2 million in revenue.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ed before we go out to the public?
Madam Chair. Is it necessary, I have brought up the subject of the corridor, that small section between Maple and Chestnut. Is that something that you folks can address administratively, or does that require an actual motion and run it to the city council and make it happen? I mean, how do you deal with it? It's just a section of a corridor that is very obvious that is in very terrible condition that would really benefit to do the similar work that was done from Maple to H, to just extend it. It's interesting that the corridor from Chestnut to Peach, the Cesar E. Chavez corridor, is actually very nice, has a lot of landscaping, everything is beautiful. But that section, which is the oldest part of Southeast, it really needs help. And so I just wanted to ask you if that's something that I would ask the Director of Public Works, is there something that you guys can, well, I know that you have to have specific approval to proceed, I guess, but I just want to know if I would then need to ask our wonderful colleagues for a motion to address that need of improvements that have been really left out several times.
And this specific corridor, this would be a street corridor?
Yes, Cesar Chavez.
As opposed to a park?
The name was changed from Ventura Kings Canyon to Cesar A. Chavez Boulevard.
Okay, yeah. Scott, is that something that you'd be able to speak to? Let's ask Director Mosier to address that.
All right. So as proposed, Commissioners, the proposed budget simply places $400,000 in major street beautification. So absent any specific motions from the PRAC or absent anything from the City Council, that would in theory leave it to the department to allocate. I can assure you that section of the corridor is definitely on our high needs list, but we don't know through the budget process with the City Council what other motions and directions might occur. Might there be any specific City Council member motions to say, great, there's that funding available, I want to see it go to a specific location. So as far as, is there a need for the commission to make a specific motion? As staff, we really need to defer to the commission for that. We know, as the department, we know the need is there, but this is really an opportunity for I think for the concerns and priorities of the Parks Commission to be voiced and forwarded on to the City Council. But I'm available for any questions on that.
Madam Chair, is it appropriate that we make a motion now to add anything that we would like to add to the recommendations?
I was going to take it after public comment. I was going to come back
Okay,
to the commission.
so I should wait after that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for, yes?
I just wanted to get some clarification, I guess. I am a resident of District 3, and I attended some of the community engagement meetings for the West Fresno parks specifically. Am I understanding correctly that that budget is separate from what we are looking at today?
Nope, that is part of this budget, yep.
So I guess I just want to express my disappointment to see a meager $66,000 being allocated for new programming. One of the biggest complaints or the feedback that I heard at these meetings is that West Fresno parks are not really providing programming for the community. A lot of the parks are being used by outside recreational leagues and things like that, not really providing programs for the community. So, I mean, youth cricket is great, but that's not really what my community asked for. And so I just want to go on record to say that it's disappointing to see that you were not able to incorporate that feedback into this budget.
Thank you for that.
I do have some questions about progress on the cricket fields that I believe last year we had approved for the sports regional complex, and then at just one St. Color Park. I see in the 2025 proposed budget, there's about $85,000 for the JSK cricket field. What happened to the remainder of the 200 or 250,000 that was allocated for that last year?
That's a great question. I believe that the motion as it was adopted by City Council was a little bit less than what the commission recommended, but I'll look into that and we can bring that back to you. But that 85 would be the carryover balance for those projects to complete those.
Okay, so
and the other 85, I believe, is repeated under the regional sports complex.
So progress has started on that, or where's that project right now, if you know?
Yeah, so both of those are currently in design.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I also do want to echo what Commissioner Soto said about programming. We had suggested the Dr. Francine Apuda Fund specifically to offer programming, and for that to be kind of just kind of dismissed with this meager like $66,000 for cricket and futsal. That is not what we wanted, but yeah, just wanted to make that clear.
If I can clarify real quick, the Measure P expenditure category 3, because I have heard a lot of concern about that. For new Measure P expenditure category 3, of course, is the bucket of Measure P that gets 8.5% of the ordinance for programs and services. That bucket was largely allocated with positions that were approved in fiscal year 2023. So this year's budget, as you can see on that first slide, really only has about $3.5 million in Measure P expenditure category 3 funding available. And so that is why it's primarily allocated to sustain the existing operations and programs and services in the department.
And Ed, I think you mentioned it earlier as a reminder that that bucket started off in 25 with a deficit of 360?
Right, it was about 361,000, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would any member of the public like to provide a comment regarding this item? You will have up to 3 minutes for comments.
I put a card there.
Can you get the card for
yeah.
me? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair McCoy. Good evening, commissioners. First, I wanted to start by just commending the department directors and department staff for all of your incredibly hard work on putting this budget together. I know it is no simple task, especially as we are facing a budget deficit in the city this year. And I also want to acknowledge and appreciate the new format and adding those subcategories. I think every year that these budgets are coming forward, there's like more clarity and more transparency, and we're getting closer to really understanding that the different metrics are being met within Measure P. I want to second, talk a little bit about the San Joaquin River Parkway items. Really exciting news. The San Joaquin River Conservancy has appointed its new executive officer, Carrie Dineski, and she's actually here in the chambers tonight. So yay, welcome to Carrie. That being said, we, the staff at the San Joaquin River Parkway and Conservation Trust, we're very eager to see the planning and coordination meetings on how the Measure P funds for the San Joaquin River Parkway are going to be spent resume as soon as possible now that we have Carrie in office. And just want to make sure I put on the record that those should include both our organization, the River Parkway Trust, and the San Joaquin River Conservancy as required by the ordinance. I also wanted to kind of affirm what some of you have said this evening. When I went through this presentation and looked at the budget, I was also disappointed to see that your recommendation to establish the Dr. Francino Puda Fund was not incorporated into the proposal. And as I recall from when you were making those recommendations in the fall, I thought that maybe they could include general fund money as well in the Parks Department budget, not only Measure P. I could be wrong about that, but that was sort of how it was presented. And so I just really want to encourage you to continue advocating for those funds and advocating for the city to develop a mechanism that Measure P funding or general funds could be granted out to community benefit organizations who are providing these services and can really potentially help the city increase its capacity in the park system and really be able to serve, to speak to your point, Christina, more programs in West Fresno. Like, there are organizations that may be able to help the city do that. And then one final thing, I attended the budget presentation on last Thursday, and I believe I heard Mayor Dyer kind of towards the end of the presentation in response to a question from Councilmember Esparza mention that the $200,000 commitment towards planting 1,000 new trees in the city was maybe being taken out of the budget. Was maybe being taken out of the budget, but I think it's still in there, so maybe in the conversation tonight and at your next meeting, that could be clarified whether or not that initiative to plant, the city's goal to plant 1,000 trees every year is being included in the budget. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone online?
Oh, no. We're having technical difficulties. My computer decided to restart due to an update. Oh. Please hold.
Okay, well, can I come back, or do we have to wait for the update? We have to wait for the update? All right. I don't know how long the update's going to be.
If you'd like to take a recess. I think, okay, technical difficulties are over, and we do have a person with their raised hand. Yeah.
Their chairs, please. Thank you. And then we do have one person online.
Lisa Flores, you have 3 minutes.
First off, I want to thank everybody for turning out and showing up this evening. I greatly appreciate it. As we go into the budget season, I would just like to remind everybody to start to think of outside of the box and who are the people that are missing within the park structure and within the outreach. Recently, in the last, say, 60, 70 days, I came across a gentleman who runs a nonprofit boxing organization, and he would really like to see where he fits in the bigger scheme of parks and recreation in Fresno, especially to members of the community that are low income. And finding information of what is that inroad has been difficult. And I just want you guys to keep in mind as you approve these things, as you approve the budget and you approve these programs, what is the outreach? What will the outreach look like? And how can you be more basically down in the streets with the people that are up and coming within new organizations and new groups? Also, too, I want to remind you that we need shade at the small dog side of the Puppy Love Dog Park over at Roding. And with that, I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Anyone else online?
No, we do not have any other raised hands at this time.
Okay, I will now close public comment. Does any member of the commission have any budget recommendation motions they would like considered?
Madam Chair, in the spirit of correcting and oversight, I consider it to be oversight, that work has been scheduled along the Ventura, that's the formerly Ventura Kings Canyon corridor, now Cesar E. Chavez Boulevard. And there's a section, I don't know if you folks are familiar with that part of town, but from Maple to Chestnut, that has a lot of dilapidation, it needs more attention. And I would make a motion that whatever funding was allocated for the beautification of Fresno, and I don't know what the title is of the 400,000, not necessarily the whole amount, whatever is necessary to complete the section from Maple to Chestnut. That was the part that was left out. And I would respectfully request that it be added to the project as soon as possible.
So how will we word that?
So you will need a motion, you would need an amount.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
We need an amount.
An amount. I would recommend putting an amount to be allocated for the street or that cleanup between Maple and Chestnut.
Correct. It's from Maple to Chestnut. It was a project that was already done, or I don't know if it's an ongoing maintenance effort, but there's a section from Maple to Chestnut that was left out. And all I'm asking that it be incorporated as part of the work that was done in the remaining parts of the street, of the corridor.
Commissioner Barrows, are you referring to the median like a landscaping treatment or something else?
Whatever was done from Maple to H, that same work, I believe there was, and our Public Works Director could tell you what it was, but it was primarily the landscaping.
Landscaping in the median island?
An update or maintenance of the area.
Just so we're specific in the motion, the landscaping in the median then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So what is your recommendation? Was it a dollar amount? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Yes, so I did make a motion, Madam Chair.
Okay. And do I have a second?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Barroso, what was the dollar amount that you put on your recommendation?
I'm not really sure. Maybe our Director of Public Works can give us an estimate of what that might take.
That was a question.
All right, Scott Moser, Public Works. The department, we do not currently have an estimate for the cost of renovating, refurbishing the landscaping for that half mile of Kings Canyon of Cesar Chavez. However, there are $400,000 in the mayor's proposed budget citywide. So as I understand the motion, the commission is considering asking to allocate some portion thereof to ensure that that project is delivered out of the 400,000.
Thank you.
Okay, that would be sufficient if you want to do it that way.
Very good.
So it'd be a motion to include that segment between Maple and Chestnut into the 400,000 that's allocated for the major street beautification.
There's also the option of making the motion that Measure P funds be used. I don't know if we necessarily have to earmark what's already included in the recommendation, or that we make a recommendation coming from this commission to the council that funding be provided from resources available from Measure P. And I would estimate that the 400,000 would be adequate, but we don't necessarily need to use the entire amount.
And that's correct. Just by comparison, the rest of the corridor, that work that was accomplished for just rough order of magnitude, about $100,000 was expended on the rest of the corridor to that point.
So it has to be less than 100,000.
Absolutely. So I can speak with confidence that that section could be accomplished for definitely for $100,000 or less, without a doubt.
Okay. So it would be about 100,000 or less.
I second that. I second. Angie, do we do a roll call vote now? Or it's just a...
No, since everybody's here, you can just do the normal.
All right, all in favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Pass. All right, I would like to also make a recommendation. I would like to allocate $300,000 to Frank H. Ballpark for improvements in their restrooms.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. It passes. Any other recommendations tonight?
I have a recommendation.
Absolutely, Vice Chair.
I would like to have the commission recommend that $3 million for nonprofits and other community organizations be put aside to establish the Dr. Francine Oputa Fund to provide after-school recreation and community services and workforce development programming as per our previous recommendation.
I second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Passes. Any other budget recommendations before we go on to the next hearing? Thank you. We will now move on to hearing ID number 24-716, Hearing Park Cultural Arts Subcommittee to present a list of recommended grantees, award amounts, project titles, and a brief summary of the project location, scope, schedule, and an anticipated impact for park for review and acceptance of the list of recommended grantees.
Good evening, Chair McCoy, Commissioners, and City staff. I'm Lilia Gonzalez Chavez, Executive Director of the Fresno Arts Council, and you can now call me Dr. Chavez. It's my absolute pleasure to make this presentation tonight. This is a historic occasion that has taken many hours and the work of many, many people. I want to thank the Commission, Subcommittee, Laura Ward, and Scott Miller for their ongoing participation in this process, and the staff of the Fresno Arts Council, who stepped up to take on the ambitious process and kept to our schedule. And also the many panelists who participated in the adjudication process. They are essential to this program working. My presentation has some minor changes because of requests not consistent with the guidelines that required adjustment, and I handed out to you those changes at the beginning of the meeting so you can follow along with my presentation, as well as the cultural arts plan itself. Now, if I can do this right, do you just push the middle? You'll move it? Okay. So, slide. In presenting these recommendations, we are moving towards providing support to our arts community in a way that they have not ever seen before. And our community residents will be the beneficiary of a plethora of new programs and arts opportunities. In this presentation, we will cover the process timeline, outreach, panelists and adjudication process, funding recommendations for the 4 grants categories, total funding recommendations, and present a few of our challenges. Slide. Our process began, next slide, please. Our process began in August of 23. Since then, we completed the cultural plan, engaged the community in the development of the guidelines, released the RFP, provided grant workshops, and provided technical assistance to prospective applicants, answered countless questions, recruited, screened for conflict, and trained panelists, facilitated grant review sessions, and with the Commission Subcommittee, prepared recommendations for funding. Slide. In the summer of 23, we revised and completed the cultural plan and had it approved by both the PRAC and the City Council. With Jeffrey Scott Agency, we completed the layout and design of the plan. The completed plan was submitted to Parks, posted on our website, and printed in a small batch to distribute to the panelists for their reference in the adjudication process and to you today. In the fall of 23, we hosted community sessions for the development of the grant guidelines, solicited input from the PRAC, to then forward to the City Council for final approval in October. The RFP was prepared on submittable and released community-wide on December 31st, with an application deadline of March 25th, allowing 3 months for application preparation and assistance. FAC provided 2 grant writing sessions in partnership with Fresno City College, 3 FAC information sessions with recordings on our website, individual appointments, phone and email assistance, and web resources, prepared and posted frequently asked questions. Information and reminders were shared through multiple media channels. Other workshops were also offered by partner community organizations. In April, we began the adjudication process. 46 community members applied to serve as panelists. They were all trained on the scoring process, provided with copies of the cultural plan and the ordinance. Panel applicants that had scheduling conflicts, real conflicts of interest, or missed training were not moved forward. Panels met and carefully scored applications according to all required criteria. A full list of all panel applicants was submitted to the PRAC subcommittee April 5th for vetting. Slide. We took advantage of all media for outreach and engagement. FAC e-blasts, social media, and press releases, followed by on-air print and print coverage. Slide. I have discussed the workshops in our resource development, but over and above all of that, we offered 30 hours of scheduled and unscheduled assistance by FAC staff. Slide. Here is a list of all of the panel applicants. The asterisks indicate those that served. Slide. For the adjudication of the grants, we used a 6-point rating scale with weighted narrative questions. This process worked well and provided for a very inclusive process with a range of possible application scoring in a fundable range. You will note no one in our recommendation scored a perfect 6. We have some work to do. Slide. 137 applications were received for a total request amount of $15,584,431. Slide. Recommended grants for emerging general operations is viewed on this slide. Funds for scores 5 and above receive 100%. Funding for 4 and above are at 90%, and 3.5 and above are at 80%, for a total of 731,928.70. Next. General operating specific support was for funding at 5 and above at 90%. I think you skipped a slide. Yeah, but yeah, let's go back to the beginning of this section because I don't want anyone to miss seeing their organization up there if that's why they're here. So first, it's emerging organizations, general operating support, and you can see the organizations that scored 5 and above will receive 100% of their funding, 90% and 80% respectively. Next slide. And now this is emerging project specific, also starting with 5 and above at 100%, 90% and 80% respectively. Next. And now general operating support for established organizations with funding for 5 and above at 90%, 4 and above at 80%, and 3.5 and above at 75%, for a total of $3,622,373.21. Next. And the last is project-specific support using the same distribution. And this is 2 slides so you can see all of the organizations that are receiving 90%. Next slide. And 80% and 75% respectively. Okay, next. Total recommendations for this funding is $8,615,456.05. This represents 72% of all of the applicants. Next slide. Okay. While we completed our process on time, it was our intent to be ready for this budget process timeline. We did have some challenges, and some of the challenges included too many categories being released at the same time. That led to a confusing process. We will not do that next time. We will only release one grant section at a time. Applicant workshops were not mandatory. In the future, we will make them mandatory because folks who didn't attend the grant workshops also didn't fill out the applications appropriately. So it's really important that they come to the workshops. Applications in wrong categories. Some people applied in the wrong category. They were an emerging organization with a tiny budget, but they applied in an established category. And I think, again, it was just having all of the categories in each application. And that was one of the recommendations through the development of the guidelines. And we really should not have adhered to that recommendation. Yes, please. Requests did not align with the guidelines. So some of the budget revisions that I just provided for you were really minor, but they were because people either requested more than they were eligible for, or they requested less than they were eligible for. We wanted to make sure that in this presentation, you had all the accurate amounts so that people would get what they're eligible for. The other issue that was a challenge for us was knowledge. Community organizations are not all aware of the state requirements and keeping their records and documents up to date. Orgs were not well-versed in grant writing. It was challenging for some of our panelists to try and figure out what is really being proposed here. So we hope to have more grant writing workshops to be able to prepare people to be able to submit stronger applications. A demonstrated challenge in budget development. We also saw applications where the applicant in their narrative talked about one thing, but asked for other things in their budget. And that's just a misunderstanding of how you develop a grant proposal budget versus just any other organizational budget. So again, we'll have special budget workshops just for that purpose. Resources was another issue. The state does not update their documents regularly. So we would check to see if applicants were current with all of their tax information and reporting. And online, it would show them delinquent. But then we would reach out to them and let them know that this occurred. And they would say, oh no, I did it. And I have a letter that demonstrates it was done. So we spent a lot of time checking and verifying that, in fact, the information that we were finding online was accurate. So we really we did provide grace in this process so that people who had done their work got credited for that work. No direct program costs were allocated for support of technical assistance, outreach, marketing, materials, printing, and our online platform. Time. We pushed really hard because this initiative passed in 2018, and the arts community has still not seen any funding. So we really hustled to try and get this out for their next fiscal year. But that was a time crunch, and we realized that we asked a lot of the panelists and we asked a lot of ourselves to make this all happen in a way that would allow people to get the funds they so desperately need. But we did it. And next time, we will have more time. We will begin the process in October so that people will have more time to fill out the applications. The panelists will have more time to review. With regard to the issue of resources, we request an allocation of $75,000 of funds in this budget process to offset the additional program costs that are not part of administration. We receive an administrative fee for our services, but that doesn't cover the direct program costs that we are incurring. And so we ask that the Commission consider allocating an additional $75,000 for that purpose. Next steps. After today's meeting, should you determine to move forward, we will be sending out a letter of intent to all of the applicants, letting them know that it is the intent of the Commission to fund this set of applicants. That will be followed by an appeals process, and we will be providing panel comments to all those who need those comments so that should they need to appeal, they will have the information to do so. Those appeals will come to you as a commission. Following that process, we will then be able to enter into agreements with grantees and move forward. Our goal is to complete this process by the end of this fiscal year. With that, I thank you all. Next slide. Oh, that's okay. It's a thank you slide. And I just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you on behalf of the entire arts community who so desperately needs this support.
Dr. Chavez, can you take questions?
Yes, I'll take questions.
I also have a question at the appropriate time. Okay.
Good evening, commissioners. In the realm of cultural arts, the notion of, Eric Payne, Executive Director of the Central Valley Urban Institute. We are a policy, advocacy, research, and action organization that centers the needs of low-income families across the Central Valley with our headquarters here in Fresno. In the realm of cultural arts, the notion of Black erasure is a pressing concern that demands our immediate attention. We must acknowledge the timeline of events that have led us to this pivotal moment. On April 15th, 2024, we embarked on this discourse by transmitting our electronic communication memo of concern to the Fresno Arts Council, aptly titled Black Erasure in the Cultural Arts Community. The subsequent response received on April 25th paved the way for a crucial meeting convened on May 3rd, 2024, at the Arts Council office. The gathering was vital as it afforded us the opportunity to engage with board members, the executive director, and the dedicated staff members in our common quest to enhance understanding and foster education regarding the processes, uplifting the lack of transparency by the organization, understanding how and who technical assistance was offered to, and how and when DEI training was offered to staff and grant reviewers. Reflecting on the protracted journey of Measure P, from its inception during our small group discussions at the foundation to its turbulent path towards ballot inclusion and subsequent legal battles, underscores the gravity of our commitment. The strenuous endeavor to secure equitable allocations for the Arts Council from the City of Fresno was a testament to our unwavering dedication to its implementation and ultimately nurturing the thriving cultural landscape within our community. With a multitude of applications flooding in, surpassing the century mark, and a commendable cohort of 40 diligent grant reviewers at the helm, it is imperative that we center equity, specifically focusing, Madam Chair,
You still have a minute.
point of privilege, okay. Community cultural arts organization, specifically focusing on bolstering African American, Hmong, and other disadvantaged community cultural art organizations. As highlighted in our prior correspondence, our organization remains steadfast in its vigilant over the process and its implementation. Moving forward, it's essential that we strategically collect and analyze disaggregated data pertaining to application submissions, the composition of grant reviewers, panels, and the demographics of grant awardees. This meticulous scrutiny will be instrumental in ensuring that the adjudication process is underpinned by transparency, objectively, and a steadfast commitment to fostering inclusivity within our cultural arts ecosystem. We are further requesting that the Commission delay this item for further discovery documents with the Commission pending new information that was given to you today by the Executive Director that has not been seen or released by the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Secretary Pratt. I just want a reminder to the public as well as to the people on Zoom that you have 3 minutes to speak. After 2 minutes, a bell will ring, which allows you to know that you have 1 more minute to speak.
Do we have anyone online?
Yes, we do, President McCoy. We have an Elliot Bach. Elliot, can you hear me? You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, and good to be with you virtually, commissioners, this evening. Elliot Bach, CEO of the Town Fresno Partnership. I'm going to start by recognizing there are some fantastic organizations and truly fantastic projects represented among those proposed for funding, and definitely, as Dr. Chavez was alluding, the huge amount of work on a shoestring budget that has been happening. Our journey alongside in the process was that we attended the workshops and gave input. We reached out to partners about projects for downtown and consulted with our city council member, administration partners, gathered support from our various partners in the community, and prepared and submitted 6 applications for project funding. we wanted to make sure that the cultural landscape that is our downtown was fully represented alongside organizations doing great things at their downtown locations. Our role is distinct as we think about the big picture, downtown, and we bring life to the public realm. Not only seek, but we take responsibility and are expected to create value in our communities downtown, both economic and cultural. So our 6 applications were about diverse cultural festivals, which incorporate the arts, managing Fulton Street during Art Hot Nights to unleash the arts within that street fair event, our winter ice rink and cultural activations around it, support for other independent event organizers who can reach into their own communities, which last year we helped 35 such events happen in addition to our own 30. Public art to bring life to the Spiral Grove and a mural in collaboration with Fresno City College. Then, after preparing and submitting, we were notified that only one project application would be accepted per applicant. So in tonight's packet, you see only one of our applications, which is a great one. It's our partnership with City College on a mural. But the possibility of other proposals being scored on merits was denied. That's an important rule, one that you would expect to have been stipulated in the program guidelines, but it's not in there. It's what was considered or adopted by this commission and the City Council. It's not implied. It's not in the cultural arts plan, and that's certainly not in the measure. It appears to have just been made up on the fly along the way process. From a 30-year perspective, there are 3 important points of concern, I believe. One is the outcome. Doubt we're the only entity that could do multiple projects, but in our role, it makes it a challenge to do more community projects in our downtown. As the administration of a process inconsistent in this regard with the adopted guidelines, I think it creates a precedent. And 3 is, what's the right treatment for a policy decision of this type and scale? Policymakers should be able to make the policies that apply, weighing the trade-offs as necessary, and that's what ends up in the guidelines. To be clear, we have no reason for concern about any of the organizations and projects recommended for funding, but proper process following the guidelines is in everyone's interest. So we respectfully request that all projects by all applicants that are eligible under the adopted guidelines be reviewed on their merits before you take the action proposed this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another person on Zoom who would like to speak. Nora Monaco. You have 3 minutes. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you very much. I concur with what Elliot is saying, and I did review all of the applicants that were listed in an article, and you could see where there were quite a few other organizations, all worthy organizations, that had the same issue as what Elliot talked about. They also applied for multiple categories. And so it is not just the Downtown Partnership, it's multiple other organizations. And so in being fair to all of them, since it's not in the guidelines that are and the public information, and it is not just one organization that is noticing this, I do concur that I believe that all applicants should have been scored on all applications, and then basically competing, or whatever you would say about it, and choosing the most worthy ones out of all of them. The Downtown Partnership certainly has a very large area to fill and very diverse. And so it makes sense that they might have more applications submitted, along with multiple other organizations that would face the same situation. So I hope that you do consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are no more people on Zoom that have their hands raised at this time.
Thank you. I will now close public comment. Does any member of the commission have questions or comments regarding this item? Commissioner Barraza, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Something that I'm interested in, I noticed you have in your grading process, you have a category called, I believe it says equity and inclusion, or cultural equity and inclusion. Could you tell me how you assess that in the process? Let me just start with that.
It's assessed by the applicant identifying in their narrative response what are their outreach methods, what is their programming, what does it include, who is their target population. That's the kind of information that provides us with knowledge of their role in equity and inclusion.
Is there a way that under the current information and data that you have, that we as commissioners may be able to ascertain what area of our city do those organizations serve?
Yes.
Is that documented someplace?
Yes. All of the applicants had to identify what council district they were in. So that's clearly outlined in their application.
But if they say they are in a certain district, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the district that they serve, but they could serve the entire city. That means that's where their home or their office is located. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's where their office is. Yes.
But in terms of the service area of the organization, was there an indication of what area of the city they served?
Many of the applicants did identify the demographic or the specific community that they were serving. But most of the organizations indicated that they would be serving the entire city.
But at a minimum, you would have information about the district of where their office is located.
Correct.
Let's see, there was another part. I think for now, Madam Chair, that's all I have. I can't remember the second question.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
When it comes to you, just, thank you. Vice Chair Dolan?
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Chavez, thank you for this informational and beautiful presentation that you've put together. I'd also like to take a moment and just thank Commissioners Ward and Miller for their work on the subcommittee, because I know this was a lot, and as you pointed out, it was a lot in a short amount of time. So I'm just going to ask two questions, and I want to ask you in advance to forgive my ignorance and naivete if these questions are really baseline, and I should know them. How do we define cultural arts as opposed to other types of?
Right. And that really is a definition that came through the wishes of commissioners and the wishes of our city government officials, and as well as other community members. So we took a very broad definition of cultural arts to include what we know as the arts, those that engage in particular disciplines of the arts. And then when we look at culture, culture is defined by values, attitudes, and belief systems. And so we then moved into the area of humanities, so that our cultural arts definition really is more like an arts and humanities definition.
So culture and arts, not necessarily cultural arts.
Right.
Do you feel that was too expansive or not expansive enough?
I think
if everything's the arts, nothing's the
I think there's a misunderstanding of what art is for art's sake and what art is for other purposes. And as we move forward, I hope that as our community gets used to expecting high-quality art programming, they will begin to make that distinction, and we will be able to expect applicants that are moving forward high quality art for art's sake programs and not necessarily art for everything else.
Are we going to lead that or are we going to follow that?
I would hope that we lead it, because if we do not, we are not always going to have the extra resources that we had this year. And so if you consider the amount of applications that we received, it is going to be important that we become far more discriminating in this process.
Yeah, and I think it'll bring clarity.
Yes.
Well. And probably help with a lot of the organizations who are applying.
Correct.
So along that line, and I know this is in there, and so again, forgive me. What differentiates emerging from established? Was it sheerly a operations number?
There were two issues that made that distinction. An organization that operates with under $50,000 as a budget is an emerging organization. An organization that has less than 2 years of arts programming is an emerging organization.
Gotcha. Thank you. And just one last, you had mentioned that you're asking for, I think it was an additional $75,000 to cover direct program costs.
Correct.
And I get that's above and beyond the administrative costs of the grants themselves. Can you give us some examples of what those direct program costs are?
The direct program costs include translation. They include the cost of the platform that we use submittable for the applications themselves. It includes print costs. We were not able to print the cultural arts plan for everyone, and we really should have been able to print those, a lot more of those. It's a 5-year plan, and instead we only printed a small number so that the panelists and you would have a hard copy of the cultural plan. And then we also have outreach costs and technical assistance costs. Those are direct costs related to the program that are not part of administrative costs.
Okay, thank you. And congratulations on your doctorate.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
Okay, great, thank you. So from what I recall, there was considerable and robust discussion both at this commission and during the guidelines development and in front of the City Council in December of 2023 around whether or not it was equitable to allow an applicant organization to apply for both a project grant and also a organizational support grant. I think that some of the reporting that's come out around this has created confusion, and I think that we saw that echoed in the most recent online comment that we got from the public. Can you let us know a little bit more if there were actually applicants who submitted more than one in each category other than the one that we heard from tonight? Thank you.
There was only one applicant that you heard from tonight that submitted more than one application in a category. Everyone else understood that you could apply for both operational support and project-specific support, but one application in each category. That information was also included in our FAQs that were online. So we really did not have, I don't know the speaker who spoke or what they may have been alluding to, but there was only one applicant that did that.
Thank you. I have some questions.
Sure.
The applicants who applied under the wrong bucket that they qualify for, were they redirected to the right bucket, and
Yes.
were they told to request the full amount that they were able to get?
Yes.
Okay, and with the applicants who didn't receive funding, how are we going to handle those? Are we going to extend for them to reapply again, or are they in the working stages, or how are we going to handle that? Because there's some of them on here maybe probably missed a paper or something, or haven't been established for a while. I'm just wondering how that criteria is, because it's really difficult to read and to understand it. We got this Friday, and I'm still trying to understand it, trying to understand the tier process, trying to understand how the awards went out. So it's very difficult to read.
Sure, and because this was the first year, as I mentioned, we really tried to help folks get in the right spot, verify that they had the proper documentation, because we wanted to provide that grace. Now, those that were not recommended for funding at all, those applications were deemed by the panel as not at a level where they were fundable. So when we think about grants processes in general, there will always be a percentage of applicants that will not make the cut. What we hope to do is reach out to all of those that did not get the funding and begin with them to start working on the next process, because there's real issues there, and I explain them in the challenges. There's issues of understanding how to develop an appropriate budget for a grant application, how to share information in your narrative in a way that someone else who knows nothing about your organization or program can understand. Those are skills that most of us don't develop unless, in fact, when I give writing workshops, grant writing workshops, I remind people that if you were good at essay questions in school, you're going to be a great grant writer. But if you weren't good at essay questions, that's a skill you have to work on. And that's what we were seeing. We were seeing applications from unskilled applicants. So we need to begin working with our community so they can build those skills.
On some of the nonprofits that were not awarded, they have been pretty established, and it seems like they would have did good in essay writing, so they would be able to do good at grant writing and developing budgets. I know that as I look at these names, some of them have received funding from several other things like Fresno Drive, for example. So I'm trying to understand the tier process and the ranking process, and trying to understand how they were ranked, and was the panel who was reviewing all the applicants, were they a very diverse group?
Very much so. We actually had multiple panels. It wasn't one panel that reviewed all of the applications. We were able to establish multiple panels, and each panel was a diverse group of individuals.
Okay. And last question.
I will tell you, just there was an applicant that broke my heart because I knew some of the things they've been doing, but they didn't write it in their application.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So maybe when we start making these meetings mandatory,
yes,
we can talk about how they need to include every little thing that they're doing when it comes to arts,
yes,
to help their application be able to rank higher, to be able to receive at least some funding to get off the ground. because I see a lot of these orgs on here, and some of them are already doing the work, but they did not receive funding. So it breaks my heart as well to see that they missed it by a couple of points when you look at the tier system. So trying to understand the tier system and how they were ranked is I'm still trying to figure out. But my last question is, how many of the applicants needed a fiscal sponsor?
You know, I don't have that number for you, but I can get it.
Just wondering, because I know sometimes it's hard for new and emerging nonprofits or CBOs to be able to maintain their budget that they're receiving grant funding from. So I'm wanting to know how many of them are a fiscal sponsor, and maybe that's probably why there were multiple projects. Just trying to understand it, because what we see here and what I've read is totally different. I've seen that there have been several different organizations who submitted several different projects and got awarded, but the paper that I have in front of me doesn't reflect what I read.
Several projects and
yeah,
were
so
awarded.
for example, the Downtown Partnership has several projects that we heard from the applicant today. The Monroe Review has several projects that from what I read, but I don't see them here.
The Monroe Review only submitted they didn't submit for multiple
so maybe
projects.
That was just something that was not telling the truth, I guess, because I did read that along with Commissioner Ward, who read that there were multiple projects submitted by the same applicant. So that was confusing to me as well. So I know that this is a new process, but still trying to figure it out and understand it has been very confusing, especially the tier process and the grading process. But I could congratulate you on trying to get it done so it can be administered and grants can be received for this year's budget. But like with anything new, we learn and we work out the kinks, just like here. You know, This is a brand new commission and we're still learning as we go. So I commend you for that, but still just trying to figure it out for myself so I can better understand and be able to explain when I receive phone calls or emails in regards to this component of Measure P.
Right. I appreciate that. And I would say we have all of the applicants listed, and so that documentation the city has, and there is only one applicant who applied for more than one project. Okay. I assure you.
Okay, thank you. And I have no more questions. Anyone else have questions?
I do. Just first of all, great presentation, Dr. Chavez. Very digestible, very easily read. I wanted to follow up on Chair McCoy's comments about, so this sheet that we have, this contains the entirety of every application that applied and the amounts that they requested, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, the multiple sheets that you have.
Multiple sheets in the packet, yes. So I also read that one article in the Monroe Review where they requested information from the city, asking for a list of all the applicants. And there was an organization that they listed, I think it was something like Sikh Heritage Society. They had requested some amount of like 30,000, and I haven't been able to find it in this packet. So are there any organizations that weren't included in this, or they were disqualified in like an earlier stage, or?
Only those disqualified that were not reviewed are not included.
Okay. So what were the reasonings for those?
Those that were not included and were not eligible to move forward were because they missed essential documents, like, let's just say they didn't have a current 990, and that's a requirement to apply for the funding. We followed up with them, checked to see if they had some documentation. Either they didn't respond or they didn't have it, and so they were not eligible for funding. It was very specific things related to the eligibility requirements that caused them to be excluded.
So do you know how many of the folks that originally applied, like how many were disqualified in that stage?
Well, I don't.
There were a total of 92 applications. Excuse me, sorry, there I do have it.
That's.
We're 137 total, and
98.
98 are recommended to move forward in funding.
Yeah, we'll have to get you that number.
No worries. And so the folks that, that did get funding or the ones on this, in this packet, so will you be, or will the subcommittee be following up with them as to why they got the score that they received, and why, like, if someone applied for 100,000 and they're only getting 80,000, for eligible funding, will you all be giving them that review as to why?
Yes,
okay.
We maintained panel comments for this very reason, that I've been applying for grants for what seems like forever, and every time, if I don't get it, I ask for panel comments. And that's because you learn through that process. So we really saved the panel comments so that people could learn from this process. We want them to get better. We want them to be successful next time. And that's why we will be providing those that are not funded with panel comments so that they can see where their deficiencies were.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Dr. Chavez.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Is it possible to, and I know it is possible, but could you provide a list of the information as to we were asking about where the organization is located, what community are they serving? I was going to ask you for a summary. I didn't know that you had it at the end of the report. We just got this, I think, maybe Friday, I don't know. But I would like to see a breakdown of how the funds are distributed throughout the city. To me, that's very important. So whether that's something, obviously all the commissioners should get it, but I would need to have that information in order to know, how are the folks in Southeast Fresno or Southwest, South Central? This is important. It's a major allocation of money. It's really millions of dollars. So I would like to, and by the way, you have done an outstanding job, and you have a lot of folks that helped you. I have no reservations about the good work that you have put into this effort, but we also have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we can explain to the world that this is a good investment, and we want to make sure that the word equity and all those words that we mention sometimes that involves that all communities have access to this process. And the only way I can see it, if I see an allocation by, even if it's by council district, I can get a sense of where it's located. So to me, that would be very important, and I would request through our chair, or I don't know where the proper protocol is, but I'd like to get that information.
That's readily available.
Thank you.
Okay. One more question. I said I was finished, but kind of not. Are we able to receive or somehow see how the tier system is set up and how the applicants were scored? Because
Sure.
I didn't see that. I would like to see that to have a better understanding.
It's actually in the presentation. If you look at the page where it shows, here it is, the adjudication, you can see that it's a 6-point ranking system. And to be a perfect 6, you have to be exemplary. And so panelists would look at the application, they would read all the answers, they'd review the budget, and then they would say, okay, overwhelmingly achieves the purpose of the program. When we talk about the program, we're talking about the cultural plan, the intent of these funds, the ordinance, meets all the review criteria and project requirements to the highest degree. That means they crossed all their T's and dotted all their I's. They were perfect. They would get an exemplary score of 6. And I mentioned in the presentation that we didn't have any perfect 6s in this distribution. So when you look at 5s, they're still strong. And going down, you can read all the criteria that the panel used to make their determination.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No more questions from me. Does anyone else have questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the recommended grantees as presented by the Fresno Arts Council?
So moved.
I have a question before we make this motion. I am affiliated with one of the orgs that is possibly getting a grant. So are we going to go like grant by grant, like under each category? Or is it just like as a whole? Otherwise, I can recuse myself if needed.
It would probably be better to go grant by grant, so you could recuse yourself at that point, would be the easiest way so that there's no conflicts.
Individually name all the organizations?
Like category, like the
so
four.
just the category wise. Yeah, so based off the categories.
Okay, let me grab my paper again. I was like, we're gonna be here till 11 o'clock. Thank you. So is there a motion to approve the recommended grantees as presented by the Fresno Arts Council for emerging orgs general operating support?
I'll move.
Second.
Vice Chair Dolan, Commissioner Singh, first, second. All in favor say aye.
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 All in favor say no.
No.
2 noes. Me and Commissioner Barraza. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the recommended grantees as presented by the Fresno Arts Council for emerging or organization project specific support?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dolan. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All in favor. All opposed say no.
No.
No. All right. Is there a motion to approve the recommended grantees as presented by the Fresno Arts Council for project-specific support? Okay, so Commissioner Singh will not be participating in this vote. He's abstaining. Do I have a motion?
Also move.
Commissioner Ward has motion. Is there a second? Commissioner Miller has second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
No.
1 no on that one.
1 abstention.
And 1 abstains. And I think that's all of them.
Get them all?
Where?
There's the program support for the establishment.
I only have 4 attached here. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the recommended grantees as presented by the Fresno Arts Council for project-specific support?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say no.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the motion.
The last one, the project-specific support recommendation. So we have to do them individually.
Okay, I'd say no.
You say no, so one no. And that's it. Did we get that? Okay. All righty. So now we will move on to hearing to receive public input on allocations related to Measure P, updates to the Parks Master Plan and Cultural Arts Plan, and annual Parks Department budget and capital improvement plans. Would any member of the public like to provide a comment regarding this item? You will have up to 3 minutes.
I have one person with a raised hand on Zoom.
Okay.
Casey, please. Lamonsky?
Hi.
You have 3 minutes.
Hi. Thank you. Hi, I would just like to have the motions read back with the votes for each motion.
No, this is just a time to comment on any recommendations you have or concerns you have regarding the hearing.
12C.
12C, which is receive public input on allocations related to Measure P, updates to the Parks Master Plan and Cultural Arts Plan, and the annual Parks Department budget and capital improvement plans.
Okay.
Would you like to comment on that? Nope.
No, I wanted to hear the motions again.
Thank you.
All right, I will now close.
We have another person on Zoom.
Okay.
Mr. Flores?
Good evening.
Flores, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, you all. First off, I have been asking, I don't know for how many months, about funding for the shade over at the Puppy Love Dog Park over at Roding. Now, you guys all know I represent over 200 puppy parents who utilize Roding Park on a monthly basis. And it's great that they spent over $700,000 to move the dog park from next to the highway, now next to high-speed rail. But the one thing that was lacking is shade for the small dogs. As everyone knows, who's ever been out to the dog parks at Roding, we fall victims occasionally, well, not victims, but our dogs tend to be looked at by the hawks in the park as potential food. So having a shade over the picnic tables would be really nice, as well as a safety item for our small little dogs. So I keep asking and asking and asking, and no one from the city, from the Parks Department, not even Mr. Aguilar himself, has told me whether my request for shade has been included in any form of the budget. So I'm hoping that someone could answer that question for me tonight. And also to, just to dovetail on the previous speaker, when things are approved and motions are made, if you could please repeat them for those of us in the peanut gallery without copies of the agenda, I would greatly appreciate it as well. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Does any member, I will now close public comment. Does any member of the commission have questions or comments regarding this item? Oh,
Hold
one
on.
more?
Now, I just want to give Casey a chance to talk if she wanted to speak.
Absolutely.
Hi, Casey. Did you like to comment?
I didn't really have any comments. I just needed to hear the motions again. I missed
I'm sorry.
the first
yeah,
one.
I'm sorry. This.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't have any comments.
All right. Thank you. You have a good day.
Sure? No more? Okay. All right. I
No,
will now-
no one else with a raised hand in Zoom, and
No other cards. Okay. Thank you. I will now close public comment. Does any member of the commission have questions or comments regarding this item? I see none. The time is 9:04. As always, I would like to adjourn this meeting in the memory of Dr. Francina Puda. Thank you guys for attending and have a great evening.